Welcome to everybody for this Business Leadership Conclave organized by Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I'm K.R. Shekhar, President, Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce and partner, Deloitte India. Along with my colleague, Mr. L. Ravindran, Senior Vice President, Managing Director, Fundermax Group, and Vice President, Mr. B. Indushekar, Director, Volvo India Private Limited, takes great pleasure in inviting you all for this Business Leaders Conclave. We have designed this conclave at a time when Indian economy is on recovery path after the turbulence period due to COVID pandemic. And when we designed this conclave 2 months back, we never expected this war crisis would become a graver issue, bigger issue. And the economy, which was on the recovery path after the COVID pandemic, is going through the challenge once again due to the Russian and Ukraine war crisis. And we believe the way in which the business will happen in the days to come, the technology that has created a most important component of the businesses will be very, very significantly vary from the past. And therefore, we believe this conclave is very relevant for the entire business community. We have requested the great speakers, great CEOs of India, the who's who of India's CEOs and who's who of the professionals to address the challenges faced by the business. And we believe today afternoon session and tomorrow afternoon session will be of great value to all the participants and the business community. We have Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, former Director of Tata Sons and former Vice Chairman of Hindustan Unilever, giving a keynote address on secret of building a great institutions, followed by a panel session comprising of eminent 3 CEOs in India, Mr. N. Venkatram, Deloitte CEO, Mr. Vaiteeswaran, Group CEO of Manipal, Mr. Guru Prasad Srinivasan, CEO of KES Global, moderated by other eminent CEO of Toyota, Mr. Parasram. We have one more session followed by learnings from successful leaders from Pankajam Sridevi, Sonali Kulkarni, and Ms. Nirupa Shankar, moderated by Tapti Ghosh. Followed by, we have an exclusive session by an economist, Ms. Runki Majumdar, on the impact of the geopolitical crisis for India investment and Indian economy. So today's sessions are all absolutely great sessions. And tomorrow we have another 3 sessions where we are talking about the transition and transformation by the 3 eminent CFOs and group leaders from Bangalore, Mr. Mohandas Pai, Suresh Senapati, and Jatin Dalal, followed by a session of navigating the challenging times by 3 CEOs once again, Mr. Sanjeev Sharma, MTR CEO, Mr. Sanjeev Verma from ABB CEO, and Ms. Vibha, the MD of HDFC New India Life, HDFC Assurance. We are also having one more unique session on relevance of social ventures to business. That means today we are not only talking about a business from a business and business from a society side, because today business has got more important and more noble responsibility on Indian society, and therefore we have invited 2 eminent people who are spending considerable time on the social side of the business, Mr. Jogin Desai and Ms. Chetana Sinha tomorrow, followed by a valedictory session by Mr. Arvind Dattar, one of the most eminent advocates India has ever seen, who has authored phenomenal books on constitution, central access, and income tax. Is going to talk about impact of India's legal system on Indian economy and investment. So we have sessions covering various challenges of the business and also the various issues that the business was undergoing and facing across. I am sure the kind of deliberations that we are going to have today and tomorrow will immensely benefit all the speakers. I should also bring it to your kind notice that Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce proudly congratulate Ms. Nirupa Shankar, who has been taken as one of the top 40 young businesswomen, business leader by today morning in Economic Times. We heartily congratulate Nirupa Shankar, as BCIC has got a great relationship with Brigade, and Brigade is one of the ambassadors and champions of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So we are immensely happy and we are immensely proud that one of the Bangalore-based industry, which is ambassador for BCIC, has been chosen to be one of the young leaders on the business side by the Economic Times. We congratulate Ms. Nirupa Shankar. Now, BCIC, for all of you to know that we have an organization, the first of the kind of the organization in Bangalore, where we have more than almost 80% of the capital employed and 80% of the workforce are the members of BCIC. BCIC in its avatar has opened up the offices in Mysore and also opened the offices in Hubli and Dharwad as a nodal center. On April 21st, we are coming out with an exclusive program for Mysore, and where we are planning to release a report on human capital development in Karnataka, authored by BCIC along with SDMID Mysore Institute. In addition to that, BCIC is the first chamber in India to open an office outside India. BCIC has opened its office in Tokyo through Jetro and Toyota. We thank Jetro and Toyota for helping us to open the office in Tokyo. So BCIC has spread its coverage beyond India, and we are talking with countries like Netherlands and Germany and Australia, where we are planning to expand our footprint also in those countries. So BCIC is expanding its operations to outside India too. BCIC in the current year has produced phenomenal reports, including reform on direct taxes, reform on economic. Now we are going to reform on Indian economy based upon the challenges prevailing. Then we are also releasing a report on human capital development. We are also releasing a report by April 30th, another report on peaceful coexistence of industry and society COVID experience. We are coming with the report authored by MS Ramaya Institute of Development. So BCIC has got a lot of research material, and BCIC has been supporting both government of Karnataka and the central government at various levels. With this introduction of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, I have great pleasure in welcoming you all for today's conclave, which will be a most important one under the circumstances what we are facing today. And after this, there will be a short video of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, which will tell you or which will help you to understand what BCIC is doing. It a short video for you to understand about BCIC, and then I'll come back again giving our opening remarks about today's conclave. With these kind words, with these few words, I would like to request my colleagues to put BCIC corporate video, please. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot. Welcome back. Let me just start my opening remarks. It's a great privilege to welcome you all once again for this phenomenal business conclave. We wanted to do a physical event, but considering the time and other challenges, we are not sure how far the government protocols will support or will disable us to do the physical event. And when we designed it, and therefore we went for a virtual conclave. The reason for doing the business conclave arises from multiple things. Number one, post-COVID or during the COVID period and the post-COVID, the way the business is being conducted, the way the business delivery mechanism is taking place has undergone a sea change. So first of a time that where the business have witnessed this sort of a pandemic and the challenge that is arising out of the pandemic. Few years back, working from home was not even an accepted concept. Forget about in manufacturing industry, even in a service industry, working from home was a relatively unknown concept. But due to the COVID, working from home has come here to stay. Every organization today encourages working from home. Now, working from home, though it's good, but also has got various challenges from a technology perspective, from a cyber perspective, from business perspective. Now, along with the working from home, the economy is also gone through tumultuous changes. The people talked about the U-shaped recovery, people talked about the V-shaped, people talked about the W-shaped recovery. But the fact remained that India went through a crisis and the recovery was better and faster than what was expected. Thanks to the government initiatives, the government, multiple schemes like Atmanirbhar, for COVID vaccination, now the government is planning to introduce a booster scheme. All those things have encouraged the business to show the resilience and also mark a recovery against the crisis that is thrown out of COVID. Now, when this sort of changes is coming up, what we realized from a BCIC perspective is that there are bigger organizations is able to adapt, is able to face, adapt, and show the lead in taking the challenges head on and making a recovery path faster than what is expected out of the organization. How it is going to help the industry and what are the things that these bigger organizations have taken steps which make them to show the recovery path much faster than what is expected. Now, this lessons and the experience of these organizations created a new philosophy and mantra, what's called leadership in new normal. Now, the COVID challenges, now following by the challenges thrown by the Russian war crisis, Ukrainian-Russian war, is throwing up a new challenges by which the entire business arena and business environment has undergone a significant changes. Technology has become a buzzword. Without technology, no organization can adapt itself. The regulators also have understood that the regulators are also keen on bringing new technologies. In fact, I would like to say that the government is well ahead of some of the private players on the technology front, be it in the tax or be it in the non-tax area. Technology has come and technology is here to stay and technology is here to enhance the business propositions for the organizations. Now, with that kind of technology that what we are seeing it across, the leadership in the business will also move to adopt technology and see how technology can help and enable the business to grow. And therefore, the leadership in new normal has become a mantra. And that's the reason we have in the first panel the top-notch CEOs of in India, Mr. N. Venkatram, CEO of Deloitte India, Mr. Guru Prasad Srinivasan, CEO of Quest Global, and Mr. Vaithiswaran, the Group CEO of Manipal, in a diverse industry. They are going to talk about the leadership in new normal. Then we also believe, as from a BCIC perspective, that the manufacturing industry was unknown for women entrepreneurs. People always related the manufacturing industry for others, and we have a great women leaders, particularly in the Bangalore side. We have women leaders in manufacturing, we have women leaders in the non-manufacturing industry. So we have a session on learnings from the successful leaders, like Pankajam Sridevi, who is the CEO of Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Ms. Sonali Kulkarni, MD of Fanuc India, and Ms. Nirupa Shankar, MD of Brigade Enterprises. Three diversified industries, and three are very successful. And what are the lessons from those three leaders which the audience and which the business community can learn. And as I said, once again, I would like to congratulate Nirupa Shankar for being taken as a leader by the Economic Times in the young category leaders. And today morning, Economic Times has showcased Ms. Nirupa Shankar as one of the successful leaders in the less than 40 years category. We congratulate Nirupa Shankar. So this is the second reason why this sort of a panel is important from the business side, because learnings from these successful leaders is very important for the business to follow and emulate. When we designed this leadership conclave, we never imagined that the Russian war and Ukraine war crisis will hit such a critical path in our recovery program. All of us know that thanks to the Russian war and Ukraine war, the oil prices was going to shoot up. There is already people are talking about a food crisis in some countries. Already neighboring countries are facing the food crisis and the crisis in the economy. There is also saying that Latin countries are going to face a food crisis. So there is going to be a challenge in the food crisis. There is going to be a challenge in the oil prices. And India is heavily dependent on the oil because, and that oil price also has got important bearing on a fiscal deficit. Now, what will be the impact of the geopolitical crisis on the Indian economy? We requested Ms. Rumki Majumdar, economist, to speak about the impact of the global crisis and the geopolitical crisis on the Indian economy. Now, these three sessions is very relevant from today's business context. Now, the other session, what we worked out is transition and transformation. Transition and transformation is just not from organization perspective, even from the business perspective. How do you transition from an old age to the new age? How do you transition from a non-technology to the technology? How do you transition from one role to the other role? How do you transition the roles within the organization? That becomes a very, very critical for the business to survive. And I just wanted to recollect Nani Palkiwala's words in his We the People book. The Jurassic Parks of the world did not survive. It got extinguished because it did not have the flexibility. The ants and the cockroaches of this world survived because of its flexibility. And what is important in today's world is the nimble-footedness and the flexibility with each business should run. And that's the reason the transformation session is very, very relevant for the organizations to flourish and organizations to learn. And that's the reason tomorrow we are having a session on transitions and transformation. We are also having one more session, exclusive session. If you could look at the panel of session, Mr. Sanjeev Sharma, CEO of MTR Foods. And I was talking to him, and I learned a few important things out of his insights. He said, Shekhar, the Russian crisis is not only impacting the oil, but also it is going to impact the global food scenario. And then I asked him, then it has got a greater chance for India to export the food from India, particularly the wheat and wheat products from India. His answer is, Shekhar, it's going to impact completely the global supply chain on the entire food industry. And I thought he's the best person. So always we talk about a crisis from the COVID and the oil side, but Mr. Sanjeev Sharma, the CEO of MTR Foods, has got a different thoughts on how the global supply chain would get impacted, particularly in the food industry. So we requested him. And ABB, which is a global player and has got a bigger teeth in India on infrastructure side, again has got a bigger challenges. We thought Mr. Sanjeev Verma, CEO, to share his perspective on the challenges. And we also requested HDFC Insurance MD Ms. Vaiba to talk about the challenges that is facing the insurance industry and the opportunities that is coming up. So that we carefully curated all the sessions from the business standpoint of view and also how the business can learn. And finally, as I said, we are also having two important speakers on the social side as well as the impact of the Indian legal system. We are very fortunate enough that we had a great session with Nirmala Sitharaman a couple of months back when she came to Bangalore, where we had an extensive interaction with her on the pre-budget and the post-budget. Minister was very categorical and forthright in saying how the government is keen to help the industry. The government introduced various sectoral reforms, various provisions under Atmanirbhar, and the government is keen to help the industry. And the government in its last budget has created a huge surplus, budget for infrastructure in the capital. And similarly, we are in touch with the Karnataka government. Karnataka government is coming out to the Global Investors Meet on November 2, 3, and 4. And Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce is actively engaged with the government of Karnataka on the Global Investors Meet. And we are also considering the Global Investors Meet. Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce is planning to host a session on April 23rd with ambassadors of all the countries and also the trade commissioners of all the countries on April 23rd at WTC in Brigade Gateway in Bangalore. That will be a precursor for the global investors meet. So the kind of program today and tomorrow and on April 23rd, it's an eye-opener for all the business community to learn and take things forward and then make things further to the next steps. That's the reason we are keeping this conclave today and tomorrow. Once again, I welcome you all. With this opening remarks, I could see Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan on the screen. I am extremely thankful to Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan for agreeing to come and give a keynote address, because he just came today morning from abroad trip, and I'm his follower in LinkedIn, and I have interacted with him a couple of times, and he's one of the great speakers, motivational speaker, and above all, a great business leader. I have read his books, I have followed his lectures, and today what he's going to talk about is secret of building great business institutions. And this topic is very relevant in today's context. There's no need to introduce Mr. Gopalakrishnan because he's known to all the business leaders, but it is customary on my part to talk few words about Mr. Gopalakrishnan. Mr. Gopalakrishnan is the former vice chairman of Hindustan Unilever. From Hindustan Unilever, he was the executive director of Tata Sons and Tata Limited. He still continues to be on the board of Tata Sons Limited. He has authored many books. He has also authored some of the best known books. So the first book, what I realized about on the business management side, which he has authored it. He has authored multiple books, and people who follow him the LinkedIn can always follow his lectures on the LinkedIn on what are the various aspects of motivation, bringing the people, improving the business environment, what are all things, the do's and don'ts of the business. In fact, I am one of his followers on all his LinkedIn lectures. So with these few words, I don't want to stand between Mr. Gopalakrishnan and the audience here. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for having come and participating in it. It's a great honor and privilege for Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce to have Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan with us. Thank you, sir. Over to you for your keynote address, and we are all eagerly expecting your keynote address, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shekhar, and also to the BCIC. I noticed my friend, distinguished friend, Mr. N. Venkatram is also on this panel. I think he's coming up next. And he will give you far more interesting insights than I'm capable of. But in the half an hour provided to me, I wanted to talk to you about the secrets of building great institutions, because I believe that this is one of the vital subjects facing this country. You know, everybody will talk about fiscal deficit, inflation targeting, monetary policy, government policy on industrialization, but nobody will talk about building great institutions. And there's a reason why I think it's so important and why I am chosen to talk about that. I have had the great privilege of working for two wonderful institutions, which are over 100 years old. One is Hindustan Lever and one is Tata. So I speak from experience and not from a theoretical framework. But my hypothesis, and it's a hypothesis, somebody may challenge it, is that India is falling behind even its immediate neighbors. Forget about United States and other such countries. Amongst our South Asian neighbors surrounding India, starting on the northeast with China, and then Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, it used to be part, and Myanmar. We were in the top, say about 40 years ago, in GDP and so on. But now we are fourth or fifth. And I hope I am not alive to see us at the bottom of the rung. We can't be below Myanmar, at least not in my lifetime. But even Bangladesh has overtaken us. I'm not saying that they're, and Bangladesh is of course a spin-off of Pakistan, which is ahead of Pakistan also. Why is India not found the right mantra, in spite of having so many clever bureaucrats, economists, managers, business leaders who go abroad and become CEOs of companies, and if I may say so, fairly adept politicians, because we've had a very stable, on the whole, a very stable sort of country, not riotously volatile like some of our neighbors. I have come to the conclusion that India has not come to terms as a people. I'm not blaming politicians or bureaucrats. All of us are part of this problem. We have not come to terms with what is the role of enterprise in the national economy and society. We have a very confused approach to this. Confusion which is well placed, because there can be many debates. But unless we can resolve this, we will continue to muddle around. This is my whole point. I'm not even comparing with China, because we were at par with China 30 years ago. Now they are 5 times our per capita income. So I want to step back and think a bit conceptually and look at the great civilizations that history has shown us have existed. The Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire. None of them was perfect, and neither is am I seeking the Indian economy to become perfect. But in my concept, they were all comprised of 3 concentric circles, which are called the 3 E's of society. The innermost circle I call enterprise. I'm not going to use any PowerPoint charts, because I think our brains are getting dulled by PowerPoint charts. It's better to, if I can't explain to you what I'm saying, there's no point relying on PowerPoint charts. So I will accept that it's my failure. The innermost circle I call enterprise. The second circle I call education. And the third circle I call eudomania. 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 So let me explain to you what these 3 circles are. The innermost circle, which I have called enterprise, has a long tradition in India. The Cholas, the Pandyas on this side in the Malappuram area, we've had a long tradition of trading, and many historians, economic historians, have written about it. And we have been a nation of traders, very successful traders, to the point that our traders have gone and settled down in other countries, and India has the largest number of expatriate PIOs, people of Indian origin. I think the number is 30 million or something, from Fiji Islands to Kenya, Uganda, and Nigeria. And what used to be trading as the heart of enterprise gradually morphed into industrial and now into services. So that's enterprise. But enterprise is not about Hindustan Lever and Tatas and Bajaj, and it is about a large number of fireflies. Every trader should run his business, and there should be a great amount of energy in the enterprise system. It is important to reflect that in India, according to the statistics of the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, we have 65 million enterprises. An enterprise, for that purpose, is defined as even a mom and pop show. Okay, 65 million, of which only 19,000. You just try to get the numbers in context. 65 million, 19,000 have a turnover of more than 10 crores. Which means the kirana shop, the grocery shop around your corner house, the fellow who's doing your motor car repair or your plumber, they're all included as enterprise. Now, if this whole country with 1.4 billion people has 19,000 enterprises, which have a turnover more than 10 crores, forget about assets. Of the 19,000, about 5,500 are listed on the stock exchange. And of the 5,500, about 20 account for 70% of the market cap. Just imagine. There is a Pareto analysis which is beyond what is considered healthy. And then we complain that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Because that's the way we have constructed ourselves. And there is a great debate, valid debate, by the way, about what kind of enterprise we should have, whether it should be left wing, right, middle, centrist, and we all are aware of those details. I don't need to go through that. But all parties are agreed that we need sustainable, honest enterprise. I call it SHE, sustainable, honest enterprise. Sustainable because it's good for the community, sustainable because it's good for the environment, sustainable because it's good for the promoter, sustainable because it can last long, honest because they will pay their taxes and behave as good corporate citizens. I think, like many other countries, we have not found the right mix for this. Whether you start with the first government, where the finance minister was Sir Shanmugam Sethi, or the present government, where Nirmala Sitharaman is the finance minister. And I'm not blaming the finance minister, I'm just giving a sweep of history. We are groping and trying to find this. And I think it's very, very important that what constitutes sustainable, honest enterprise has to be discovered by Indians in order for this economy to grow and be sustainable. Why is it so important? Because it is that system, the first circle, which generates all the resources by paying taxes, so that the second circle can be subserved. The second circle I call education. By education, I don't mean primary and secondary education. Of course, that's included. I mean education in a much broader sense of culture, dance, drama, poetry, filmmaking. We want a very vibrant educational sector. I chose the alphabet E because it makes it easy to remember 3 E's. And if you have a vibrant cultural, social enhancement, then you come to the third circle. Eudaimonia in Greek philosophy means a feeling of happiness and contentment. Ramrajya, whatever else you want to call it. Now, the engine that is driving it, if you have bad petrol in the engine, the car can't run. You may get a Ferrari, but the car, you might have the best economic policies, but if you don't have sustainable, honest enterprises and haven't created that atmosphere, then I think to expect the Ferrari to run is not very sensible. So I believe, especially people like Bangalore Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Commerce can focus on this word SHE, sustainable, honest enterprise, because that can be our contribution. Now, what does honest enterprise mean? And I think in this context, I have to explain 2 words, institution and shaper. What is an institution? Because every company can consider itself an institution. Institution doesn't only mean civil service, civic service like parliament and judiciary. It also means enterprise. And enterprise is comprised of a number of institutions. Like, I consider Tata's to be an institution. I consider Godrej to be an institution. You don't have to be very big to be an institution. Our software industry is a very good institution, comprised of a very large number of stars in the sky. Not only TCS and Infosys, but many, many more, which is approximately adducing to the description of sustainable and honest. Approximately. You can always find fault with them, which we can't say for the manufacturing or the trading industry with so much confidence as we can for the software industry. That's a product of history. Now, what is an institution? An institution, think of the Taj Mahal in Agra, and think of a Kabristan in some small city in Agra, or which is an institution. I don't think you need a debate on that. Think of Red Fort in Delhi, and think of a lovely mansion in Koramangala, which is an institution. So we have a concept of institution that they are sustainable, they are durable, they are long-standing, and they inspire a sense of awe. Then only we apply the word institution. I consider, though it's imperfect, Indian democracy to be an institution. None of our neighbors has it. We should be proud of it, though we need to constantly improve it. So an institution is something that produces awe. Now, what is a shaper? A shaper is a person who takes what is basically a good company and is able to do certain things to that to make it into an institution. Not everybody is a shaper. We've had fantastic, outstanding scientists, but Homi Bhabha was a shaper. He built institutions like TIFR, like atomic energy. Vikram Sarabhai was a scientist, but he also was a shaper. All scientists are not shapers, all shapers are not scientists. And he built ISRO, he built Atira in textile research. So we have people who may be very top quality professionals, but who may not be shapers. And in the world of business also, we have very successful business people, but they may not be shapers. If I had to count the shapers who are producing entities that can last long and don't keep getting into arguments with their auditors every so often, some arguments will be there. That's part of running a business. Then I would count, I don't want to be partial to Tatas and Levers because I have worked there, but I would consider Mahindra, I would consider Godrej, I would consider maybe Murugappa Group. There are many other companies which also, just 1 minute please. There are many other companies also which would qualify as shapers of institutions. Now, we have to understand what makes a shaper and what makes an institution if BCIC is to promote institution building and shaper skills. And that's the nub of what I want to state in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to be brief. It may appear mysterious, but I've written 6 books on this. Research has been done. It's all available in the public domain. And BCIC can give you the references. If they don't have it, they can get it from me later on. But it is a crucial point for India to build shaper skills in people, in leaders. BCIC can play a big role in this, and to help shapers to build institutions. Imagine that instead of 25 companies accounting for 60% or 70% of the market cap, if you had 500 companies, and the largest one is not diminished because there are so many companies, what kind of an economy we will have? Can you just imagine? I mean, that is the potential of India. After my retirement from Tata some 7-8 years ago, I got associated with a very premier institution here called Bhavan's SP Jain Institute, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management. And one day in a faculty meeting, I was just chatting with them, and I asked the question, do you understand what's an institution and what's a shaper? I have never dealt with academics before, but then academics have the ability to get into vigorous debate. And they produced me 500 pages of research papers on the same subject because they were used to going into the net and looking at their library. I am not used to that. I said, with this 500 pages, I can do nothing. My training in business has been everything. If you can't get it into one page, nothing will work. So I converted into a one-page matrix. And that is the heart of what I want to say. If I have to describe it, I would say that it is the Brahma Mantra for business. But no MBA course teaches this. No management development program runs something on this. It is something that each person discovers during a 30-year career. And then it goes with that person's retirement into his head, and from his head it goes to the crematorium. And that is what India is missing. We have some of the finest entrepreneurial minds who have learned lessons, but the lessons go in their cranium. I call the richest place in the world, or certainly in India, as Chandanwadi crematorium, because people are burnt and in their brain lie memories and experiences and skills which are not imparted to anybody, which is one reason why I'm maniacally writing books, on the assumption that I may have something to share. Everybody may not want to. And I'm trying to do the same thing. The reason why I'm addressing BCIC is I'm hoping that by sharing with BCIC, you can connect with Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's SP Jain Institute and ask them to run a program for you or whatever. What is this one page? I said we must identify 6 companies, 6 exemplars of companies which are got all the appurtenances of an institution and which are led by shapers. And the shaper must be alive today to be talking to. I didn't go to Godrej because Mr. Pirojsha Godrej died long ago. I didn't go to Bajaj because Mr. Jamnalal Bajaj died long ago. I didn't go to Tata Group because Jamshedji Tata died long ago. But the companies I chose or we chose had to meet five criteria. One, that it has come into public consciousness in the last 50 years. When I began my career in 1967, these companies were unheard. They didn't exist. Though you may find it, younger people may find it difficult to believe what I'm saying. The second is that the company must have a successful business going on now. And it may not be perfect, but it's got a very high value for ethics in the public consciousness. Third, that it makes a meaningful difference to society. It's not just a money-making machine. They are not all the time coming in the richest list or poorest list or whatever. And the shaper is alive for us to interview. On these criteria, believe it or not, out of the 25 companies that account for 70% of the market cap, we could find only 6. Actually, I found 10, but 4 of them declined to participate in my research. So we were left with 6. First one is TCS. Mr. Kohli was alive at that time, and Mr. Ramadurai mercifully is still alive and there to talk to us. The second one was Harsh Mariwala of Marico. The third was Uday Kotak of Kotak Mahindra Bank. Deepak Parekh of HDFC Group, and he's in the news these days as a tremendous shaper. We had Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, a Bangalore industrialist who's created Biocon, and we have Larsen and Toubro, Mr. Anil Naik. So I can tell you, the only company that existed or was heard of or was a preferred employer in 1967 of these 6 I mentioned was Larsen and Toubro. And the image of Larsen and Toubro in 1967, I can tell you, I was a potential applicant for a job, is they are a large engineering construction company of high competence, pay you very poorly, and nothing happens to you. Guy like Nayak came and, he just changed the image of. So we wrote 6 books. Firstly, we prepared a research approach. Then we wrote 6 books, one on each of these companies, to find out that if American companies can write good to great, lessons from excellent companies, why is there no Indian book on good to great lessons from excellent companies in India? You will have hosannas of Economic Times award winner. Within 3 years, something will happen and that poor fellow will get into some trouble. And, his name will come back for the same reason, for a different reason. So we said we must also have good to great companies in India. We do have, and we thought we identified 6. And we could be wrong. No, we are not saying we have the formula for perfection. There's nothing in life that's perfect. But we thought these 6 companies, where the CEOs agreed to be part of the research, gave us material. And this one page that we created was a very interesting page. I take the copyright for it because I spent a lot of time converting 500 pages into one page, which I thought was also a good exercise for our academics to make it practical. Vertically, we had 3 columns. The first column said mindset. The second column said behavior. And the third column said, what actions did he take? Mindset reflects the way your philosophy, your brain, how your brain is working. The behavior is how that manifests itself to other people. And the action is what you actually did about it. And so people judge their leaders by their actions, from which they assume what their behavior is, from which they assume what the mindset is. So if somebody is always producing dubious accounts, and if I'm studying that company as an auditor or analyst or whatever, I say actions are always producing controversial accounting entries. And his behavior is to always find a loose end of the regulation. His mindset is not to do performance, but to find a way to get around the performance barrier. So mindset, behavior, action. Horizontally, you put 8 attributes. We found there were 8 attributes. I'll just read out 5 of them because I'm not going to talk about it. There isn't enough time. One is called orbit changing. That's attribute number 4. Attribute number 3 was called what are the levers of change. Attribute number 6 was breaking barriers. Attribute number 7 was cyclical learning. And attribute number 8 is stakeholder orientation. Each of these has a definition. It's there in every book. Each of those 6 books has the definitions. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about them. It's the first 3 that I want to focus upon. The first one is people orientation. The second one is critical thinking. And the third one is short and long term simultaneously. Here also, I am not in a position to speak about each of these attributes in detail. But why have I separated 3 plus 5? Because every shaper has the first 3. Every shaper doesn't have the others. He'll choose out of the 5 which is suitable to his industry and his company. So I called it the 3 plus 5 matrix. If I may use the metaphor of golf, I must have a driver, I must have a putter, and I must have a mid iron, say 7 iron. All the others are optional. If I don't have them, I can manage. Assuming I'm not a Tiger Woods of golf. This people orientation is the most neglected thing in Indian industry, enterprise. Everybody pays lip service to it, but if you see what is the mindset and how are people actually got a people orientation program. People doesn't mean employees only. I'm including business associates. I'm talking of the way you deal with other people and build relations. Luckily for me, I worked in Tatas and levers which have an exemplary record. Not perfect. You can find fault with Tata, you can find fault with levers. I have no doubt about it. But they produce tremendous leaders on the whole compared to many other institutions that we have in this country. Critical thinking is the ability to be a geologist and an astronomer simultaneously. What do I mean? Imagine that you select a geologist, give him his bag of tricks, select an astronomer who's got a bag of tricks and send the boats to land them in moon and ask them to send signals back. The geologist will take out his gadgets and start digging the ground. He will see what is inside this object. The astronomer will take out his gadgets and look at the sky and say, what is this object a part of? These are very different questions. If I show you this pen, you can say, what is inside this pen? Or you can say, what is this pen a part of? A literary scene, a poetry circle, a firm of accountants because they need a pen to write their account, or they used to require a pen to write their accounts. So the astronomer and the geologist ask very different questions. And I have many examples from Tatas and levers, but in the interest of time, I will not go to all of them. And the last one is what I call short and long term. Very often I meet young people who say, there is no time to think about the long term. I work 12 hours a day dealing with the short term. And I said, that's the best career killer you can ever find. And I said, look at, now that I'm at my age and stage, I look at my daughters, my daughter-in-law. I look at how they are raising my grandchildren. Because when I was younger, I didn't see my wife that closely. But mothers are fantastic short and long-term combiners. The baby is crying, she will ring up Padmini, will ring up Ragini, she'll ring up Padmini, anybody else, find out how to solve the problem. The men will be Googling how to stop the baby crying. This is the difference between short and long term. Men trying to look what is inside it, women find out what is the context and try to solve it. Woman never fails to dream of her children's future. So women have a very different mindset, and which is why I believe the diversity of women on boards is a very fine. I wish there were more women on boards, but that's a separate subject and not for discussion today. So I have this 3 plus 5, 3 essential and 5 optional matrix. broken up into mindset, behavior, action. And I took this chart like a horoscope, and as we interviewed all these CEOs, I filled up this, like a risk matrix prepared by a risk analyst. And it filled up beautifully. And certain things came out as more densely populated than others. And that's what we isolated and written in these books. Now, is this if you learn this, well, if you learn the Gayatri Javam, you will not become a great Hindu. You have to do much more. So by learning what I've told you, it doesn't make you create institutions. But I would urge BCIC to collaborate and ask, if necessary, SP Jain Institute, Bhavan, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, and collaborate with them to run a program for your business leaders so that you can spread this message. Even when Gautam Buddha thought of his philosophy, or Jesus Christ thought of his philosophy, or Muhammad got this message on the mountain, or Krishna had this knowledge, it was imparted to other people. We need a way to propagate this, and chambers of commerce and industry can play a tremendous role. It's a task that you have to undertake for the next 20, 30 years. But I would like CII, Institute of Chartered Accountants, FICCI, BCIC, etc., to see how they can spread without giving it appurtenance of research, because that puts off a lot of operating managers. Practical courses that people can learn so that they can try to become shapers. I wish BCIC, I first thank them for inviting me, and I would like to wish BCIC, in case they embark on this journey and they find the message appealing, to create shapers out of BCIC members, who in turn can create shape institutions out of the BCIC membership. Thank you, Mr. Shekhar. I hope I've shared some thoughts with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your illuminating and encouraging address, not only to business, but also to BCIC. I just wanted to reflect upon what you said and then give a little bit perspective from us as what we have been embarking in the last few years. BCIC as an organization is always keen to encourage all the businesses and the leaders. My immediate past president, Parasuraman, is from Toyota. And Toyota has deputed one exclusive person to BCIC to support BCIC on all matters. And Deloitte, I don't have to talk about Deloitte. Not because Mr. Venkatri is here. Deloitte as an organization has always supported the people to give it back to the society. Third, Mr. Parasuraman, who is here as a past president, is going to moderate the next session. The commitment, what we have shown to be, this is phenomenal. Though it's not right on my part to say that, but I should say because of the commitment, what he has got to the chambers for building up an organization. His father is in ICU. His sister is undergoing a surgery right now. But despite that, he wanted to be in the panel because he has got that commitment to the organization. So we have phenomenal leaders in chambers who has got a phenomenal commitment. In addition to the individual commitment, sir, we also have an organizational commitment from BCIC. We are encouraging, the BCIC is the first chamber in South where we are encouraging the Women Leaders Awards, constituted by eminent jury members, Ms. Gauri Kumar, the former Gujarat Secretary, Ms. Pankajam Sridevi, Ms. Akila Krishna Kumar, and S.V. Nathan. We have eminent jury to choose the Women Leaders Awards. Last year we did the second year we are doing it. We also encourage startups because, as you rightly said, the sustainable, honest enterprise, which is the most important aspect for business to grow. We have created an exclusive mentor council to support the startups. Sure. This is the first organization in India to create this sort of a mentor council by which the startups gets the advice and the benefit of advice from established leaders. And the third important initiative, which will be coming out officially on April 21st, BCIC is coming out with the exclusive skill development academy in collaboration with one of the bigger organizations in the construction, infrastructure, manufacturing, and IT side, travel and tourism sector. We are coming out with an official announcement on April 21st. It's skill development, again, not only on the skill side, but also, as you rightly said, the sustainable, honest enterprise. We wanted to promote that. We are focusing on that also as part of that curriculum. And the last but not the least, our manufacturing committee is launching our e-Kaizen library on April last week, where there's the best practices adopted by all the manufacturing companies during the COVID is collated, and it is given for the benefit of the SMEs and MSMEs so that they can learn this tricks, they can learn all the important nuances in this manufacturing set and grow. So BCIC as an organization, we are embarking on various initiatives to support and implement what you said, the SHE, Sustainable Honest Enterprise. We did not use that word. Thanks to you, we are going to use that word in our programs, but we are doing it in a different way, in the same way to achieve the objective of creating what we call in BCAC, create a responsible corporate citizen of this country. That is what we would like to do. That's it. Thanks to your address. And as an organization, we have great organizations to support us in Bangalore, be it Biocon, be it Wipro, be it Toyota, be it Deloitte, all the organizations support Chamber. And we have great leaders who are participating and supporting BCSC programs. We look forward to your programs. And definitely, sir, we take your inputs very seriously. We would like to implement this. And definitely, we will come back to you and seek your inputs as established business leader. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much, sir, for taking your time. I don't want to take any question. I don't want to give audience a question because we don't have running part of time. But definitely, as most of the audience are in the LinkedIn, they can always reach out to you for any points that they have to talk to you and chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, and before I request Ravindran to give a vote of thanks, I just wanted to take only one more minute where we would like to showcase our memento, which we'll be sending to you in a due course of time. Over to you, Ravindran, for giving vote of thanks.
Yeah. Respected Mr. Gopal Krishnan, you're a prolific writer. I am an ardent student of yours and a prolific buyer of all your books. Out of the 35 books that you have authored, I seem to be having close to 33. Only 2 books that I seem to have missed is When the Penny Drops, Learning What's Not Taught, and A Comma in a Sentence. These are the 2 books that I seem to have missed, but I'll certainly try to get in my hands very soon. I think pearls of wisdom came from your talk today, and that's primarily coming out of 2 large organizations and excellent organizations of repute that you have been involved in, HUL and Tata. I narrowly missed joining you in Brook Bond. A couple of good notes I could make, but I'll take just about 2 minutes. I request your patience for that, sir. First most important thing is you spoke about the 3 E's: enterprise, education, and Euromania. This word Euromania itself is a new word for me, but I will certainly try to understand from the dictionaries. Shapers of institutions, I think you gave a wonderful suggestion to us as to how BCIC can help in shaping leaders in our own member companies. I'm certainly sure that we will work on that. The attributes for creating and to get the shapers of institutions, the 3+5 matrix that you spoke about is something very interesting, and we have certainly made a note of that. My own learnings out of creating and building great business institutions as to what the secrets are, I possibly would look at 4. One of them is vision and sense of purpose. The second could be the singular focus to achieving success. The third is the visibility factors. And the fourth is the value in terms of features, uniqueness, benefits to consumer as to what differentiates a company from its competitors, etc., etc. So and the last important point is that we have taken the learning and your direction that we should coordinate with Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan and SP Jain. We'll certainly do that, sir. Thank you very much for everything that you've done for us today. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Friends, we'll go to the next panel session, which is leadership in the new normal. The session will be moderated by my dear friend and my immediate past president, T.R. Parasuraman. The audience of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce knows Parasuraman very well, but it's customary for me to introduce Parasu. Parasu is the immediate past president and the whole-time director of TA Toyota Engines India Limited. Parasu, in his time as a president, has taken BCIC to a greater heights. It's very difficult for me to follow his footsteps and lead BCIC, but he has been a great supporter for me and the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And he is one of the architects for this business leadership conclave. And this commitment to the chamber is very, very high. And despite all the personal challenges that is undergoing today, is able to take the call through his mobile sitting from the Chennai hospital. Thank you, Parasu, for being here. I know very well you are going through difficult times, but thanks so much for your commitment and participating in today. Thank you so much, Parasu. And we have three eminent CEOs as a panelist. Mr. Vaitishwaran, Vice Chairman and MD of Manipal Education and Manipal Health Group. Vaiti is a great friend of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Phenomenal experience in various industry, be it manufacturing, be it education, be it services. He has been leading the Group CEO of Manipal Group, and he has been a great supporter of BCIC. And he is everybody in the education sector talks about how Manipal revolutionized education, how Manipal revolutionized the healthcare side, and Vaiti has got a greater hand in revolutionizing those two segments, which are very critical part of the Indian economy and the days to come. And during the COVID time, Vaiti, both in his individual capacity as well as in professional capacity, has led from the front on supporting the society in a greater way. Thank you so much, Vaiti, for being here, and thanks for taking your time. I have great pleasure in introducing my CEO, N. Venkat. He's a phenomenal guy who, not because I'm saying because he's my CEO and he's here, but even otherwise, I have a great respect for his qualities and his attributes. What Gopal said, some of the attributes I could see him with him. He transformed Deloitte as an organization to a #1 position in India. A man who has got a tremendous vision and connect to the people. What Gopal said, what people is not just to the employees, but connecting to the various ecosystem around our organization. And before becoming a CEO, Venkat was an audit leader. He was an authority on US GAAP and IFRS, the man who took TCS to the listing. So he's got phenomenal credits in audit side. And in the last 8 years, he has taken the Deloitte to the highest level. He is also part of the Deloitte Global Exco, and he is also running the various programs for Deloitte Global in India, including what is called the 1 Million Child in India. So he is responsible for that program. In addition to that, Venkat also has got a keen eyes on yoga. In fact, he practices yoga to make sure that people like Shekhar does not create more stress for him. So thanks, Venkat, for taking your valuable time and sparing your time to share with the BCIC audience. And the next speaker is Mr. Guru Prasad Srinivasan, CEO of Quest Global Limited. He has recently become CEO, but he has been an old hand. And I spoke to him. He, without mincing the words, he accepted, Shekhar, I am accepting the invite. He did not even say anything. Thanks, Guru, for the extreme support and the confidence that you have on BCIC and for joining it. And we have three great panelists who have come from different fields and diverse fields to show what are the challenges in the new normal is creating, how the business would adopt. Back to you, Parasu, for taking this panel. Thanks a lot, Parasu.
Thanks, Shekhar, for the excellent introduction. And once again, I take it a great pleasure and privilege to welcome all, especially the great panelists, what Shekhar has introduced. The three musketeers I would call, I think the three great tall leaders for today's session, for the leadership lessons for India beyond 2025. We have Mr. Venkatram, the great tall leader from Deloitte, with a huge experience in the corporate field, in telcos and in Deloitte. He has been a person of transformation. And Mr. Guru Prasad, who is the CEO of India's largest staffing company, 430,000 and odd people, one of the biggest companies you can think of in terms of staffing and manpower. Then we have Mr. Vaitishwaran, the Managing Director and Vice Chairman of Manipal Education and Health Care, which is also one of the leading organizations of the country. So what I thought, I will just set the platform with a small introduction. Then I would request each of the leaders to share their views for around 5 to 7 minutes. Then I thought we will have some Q&As then throw the session to the audience. So this session is very, very strategic and very important because we have been going through a roller coaster in the last couple of years. Nobody knows what is next. We are the wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 now, what next? And again, we are talking of the next wave now in June. And globally, I think there are 4 or 5 waves also the countries have been facing. And nobody is certain on what is going to happen next. So much of uncertainties, ambiguities, and this is the real management lesson that we can learn of. Means there is no certainty. And I think we need to continue the business in the most uncertain conditions. If you look at a country like India, again, India is going to the top of the world. Many years back when I used to travel abroad, people used to ask me, what is the future of India? Now everybody says India is the future. I think the complete equation has changed. And we're talking of a 5 trillion economy. I think, okay, 2025 may be slightly early, but definitely it is only a few years away from 2025, comfortably, backed by powerful reforms of the Modi government, starting with Atmanirbhar, then the Make in India, powered by Youth India, Digital India, and again, we have a huge impetus on infrastructure in the recent budget. Then again, the PLI schemes, which have been very, very productive. All the sectors have been addressed on the new technologies, new innovations to promote localization. Of course, on one side, we have a lot of growth story and pent-up demand after the COVID. Today, I'm very happy to say that most of the organizations are back to track. In fact, if you look at the automobiles, I'm sure that people are all running with a lot of overtime work. And I've been visiting some of the supply chains in the recent times. I'm surprised to see people don't have time to produce in 2 shifts or even 3 shifts. People are working round the clock, and there's a huge pent-up demand happening. That's a very positive news. While at the same time, supply chain is not fully stabilized because of recent problems of semiconductor and other challenges of a geopolitical nature, like Russia-Ukraine crisis, which has taken a new twist of event in Europe and several other countries because of the complicated supply chain. Oil prices shot up, touched 130, 140 again. There seems to be some stabilization. But nevertheless, there is a lot of roller coaster happening in the last few months. Then, of course, as in India, as a country, we have already started the booster dose. We have almost completed the vaccination drive in spite of a huge 130, 140 crores of population. But yet we could really manage COVID very well thanks to the government leadership and huge support from corporates and NGOs. A country like India could comfortably manage and set a good lesson for the rest of the world. So we started supplying a lot of medicine to the rest of the world. Then coming to manufacturing or any business itself, India is very prospective. I think all of us know that China has been facing a lot of problems in the recent times, and people have been shifting businesses from China to other countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, and India, and many other destinations. And this is a great opportunity for India. But I always keep telling this, India is one of the youngest populations in the world, which is a very, very big strategic advantage because of the demography of dividend. And whether we like it or not, we are not only going to have market in India, but factory in India. Market in India because of the sheer population, and factory in India because India is going to be the factory of the world. And whether we like it or not, the China's market also will come to India in a big way in terms of manufacturing. And India is going to migrate from service sector, which is 55 to 60% today, to the manufacturing sector, unlike most of the economies. For example, China is migrating from manufacturing to service. Normally, it happens from manufacturing. As people age, we go to service. India, it's the reverse cycle is happening. This is a great thing that is happening for India. Therefore, a lot of positive winds and tailwinds for India going forward. At the same time, there are a lot of went into a gloom for nearly 3-4 months, especially small scale companies, MSMEs, had to shut shops. They had a huge problems of financing, and many could not receive the shock of COVID. And big companies had to support, and government support came timely. But there are a lot of challenges in that. From chambers also, various activities were taken up with the government, and we could get a lot of support to the MSMEs and struggling companies. So many lessons have been learned. In fact, going forward, for example, the company like Toyota, Shekhar was just mentioning, I think we could learn a huge number of lessons. For example, every month we used to have a meeting at Bangkok or Tokyo, or Thailand or Australia, Philippines, like that. Today, we're able to manage comfortably all the meetings working from home. I think this is a great thing, billions of dollars savings. Similarly, supply chain is very, very complicated for us. And we used to visit the supply chain very often across the globe, through the 3D simulation, then virtual audits, then factory tours through VR realities. Therefore, many, many things have happened, which has been very positive. Has taken a new shape. We're able to plan everything digitally. And thanks to the new technologies, the Internet of Things, the IoT, which is in a big way coming and changing the manufacturing arena, then artificial intelligence, machine learning, embedded technologies, and all these technologies are integrating, 3D printing, all these technologies are integrating to form a new manufacturing paradigm, which is going to drive the world. I'm told in Sony, is managed by a dog and a human being. The purpose of the dog is to feed the man, to chase away people, and the purpose of the man is to feed the dog. So remote locations management is becoming very popular. Unmanned operations are becoming very popular. Therefore, these are all the kind of challenges. At the same time, there are equal number of opportunities and learnings. So today's session, I have basically framed 3 big questions to all the 3 panelists, and each one is from a different area. The first question, so what I thought, they will share the perspective, then we are going to have the Q&A. The questions that I raised to the panelists largely, the learnings which have come through the COVID, which are permanent in nature. There's a lot of temporary in nature, but I'm very interested in permanent in nature, which will improve the competitiveness of this country. Second question to the panelists is the impact of this pandemic on the people, which is very, very important as that. And lastly, a lot of digital revolution is happening thanks to the COVID. So how the digital revolution is going to impact the new leadership and new learnings for India beyond 2025. Therefore, this is the kind of, I had a brief discussion to share their viewpoints. So I would request each panelist to talk for 5 to 7 minutes, starting with Mr. Venkatram. Over to you, Mr. Venkatram.
Thank you, and good afternoon to my colleagues on the panel and colleagues in the audience. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I think Mr. Gopalakrishnan has set us very high targets. So we will all try to be as practical and pragmatic as possible in the circumstance. In the opening remarks, what I would like to really talk about is that when we look at the changes ahead, we perhaps have to look even beyond the pandemic, because what we are really looking at is how does India revive and thrive? And for that, I would like to just pull you back to a few decades ago in what we call the post-Cold War period, when the American military coined the term VUCA, which we as consultants have used and profited from quite a lot in the days since. The perception being that the world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, VUCA. And in a sense, when the pandemic happened, we said, oh, this is again a VUCA period. And we talked about, the geopolitics coming in I'm talking now, not even of the war, but still in the context of the pandemic. The fact that we said there is instability, there are, for example, we touched upon supply chains, Mr. Parsuramman just spoke about, the changes that were happening, the technological transformations that took place, the digital transformations that got accelerated because of the fact that, we had to work in a different manner, etc. A lot of this was really attributed to this scenario. But however, as we went wave after wave of the pandemic, and now particularly if I speak to my European colleagues, if you see the anxiety that is there in Europe around what is happening in Ukraine, and the possibility of the war escalating, or the difficulty that the Americans are having in terms of coming to terms with what they have created in China and how it unravels. It looks like VUCA is actually a rather inadequate descriptor of the situation that we are in. So therefore, it's possible, I think, to agree with what an American anthropologist, James Cassio, has said, that the Western world has described it as the Bani world. And Bani here stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. I hope what I'm saying is not incomprehensible, but essentially what he said is we move from volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous to Bani, which is brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. But herein lies our opportunity as well. And herein lies the opportunity for entrepreneurship to flourish. I have said this publicly as well, that I believe that despite all that we talked about supply chain and what we could do from India when, in the early days of the pandemic, people were isolating China, thinking that China will get isolated. And then the gradual reconciliation to the fact that it will be China plus one, that China will continue and other countries will come. I forget the exact number offhand, but it will say if 35 or 40 companies did really move part of their supply chains, only 10% of that business actually came to India. 50 to 60% went to our smaller neighbors in the region, such as Vietnam. And I think, therefore, we lost out on the first round of supply chain. I'm not saying that's going to be forever, because the opportunity we get from the environment we are in is going to give us new opportunities. And that is what I would like to talk about today. When the Q&A comes, I can probably give you examples in terms of how we can use that for our transformation. So that is really what I wanted to say in the opening remarks, to say that, yes, we have moved from a VUCA world to a Bani world, and therefore we as management would need to think differently. And I already see with our own clients and in the way in which we advise them and in what they are doing themselves, that every leader is looking in terms of how they can recapture revenues, expanding to new areas of opportunity, particularly for top line growth, customer experience, and of course, looking at how they enhance their profit margins. So that they're looking at their cost structures, what they need to do on future investment, balancing short-term versus long-term needs, looking at cash flows, capital structures, optimizing their assets. And there is absolutely no doubt, to the point Mr. Parsunaman made earlier, that digital transformation is key for growth, for reducing costs, and making progress with insight-driven organizations. I also hope that when we answer the questions, we will deliberate on the question around the future of work, because I think talent is truly the most important part of the future success of this country. We always talk about a young workforce. We talk less about how we reskill them, about how we train them, how we educate them, and how, most importantly, we keep them in a state of wellness. And so I think these are the sort of things that we will have to conclude on today. In the background, for businesses big and small, that societal expectations of us as business have changed, and these have changed forever. Because I think that my personal view, and I do not think that I am wrong here, is that if you follow history, in events such as the pandemic and what is happening today, will leave a lasting new cycle in history. These are not temporary events. They will change the way in which we do business forever. It is akin to what happened after the Second World War, when Europe had to build again. And the way they built business again was not to build the same structures that got bombed out, but to build new structures, more efficient structures, using the latest technology so that they could prosper in what then was technology, was the Industrial Revolution. So I end on the optimism that in crises like this, as history has shown us, both for countries and companies, leaders will emerge, and these will be leaders who can be trusted by people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vikram, I think for a very scintillating opening address where you talked about technology and people and new normal and new leadership, which is going to emerge out of the kind of the changing point. So now I would request Mr. Guru Prasad from QuestCorp to share his views. In fact, QuestCorp is one of the largest service providers in the nation, with a footprint in 10 countries, 3,000 plus clients, and 4,22,000 professionals. So one of India's leading business service provider. So we would like to hear your perspective, Mr. Guru Prasad. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parshuraman. Thank you so much for having me on this event, part of this event. And we're extremely fortunate to be part of this panel, sharing this panel with Vaidhi sir and Mr. Venkat. So thank you so much. From my perspective, I keep saying this in multiple forum. I think we are in the best times of India's, the country's progress. Our parents wouldn't have got a kind of opportunity to see this, or for our kids and grandchildren, it will be a new normal for them, and they wouldn't see so much of volatility. But I think we are experiencing, in many occasions when I talk about year Y2K, people, the younger generations, Gen Zs and Gen Ys, they can't really correlate. When we go back and explain them, it took a couple of years for us to get prepared for an Y2K year. So it's, I think, one of the best of experiences that we have seen through. From here, I think if I were to really call out certain critical events in the country, first and foremost, we are coming through a very unseen kind of event. We are coming out of a COVID wave, which was probably first time experience like a Y2K year for us. The second is, a COVID kind of environment has led to a lot of digital acceleration. When I say digital acceleration, across every segment. It is not specific to a sector. So whosoever we talk to, there's massive push on digital adoption, or creating a kind of automation. For example, we had almost about 1.5 million schools that got impacted, and 247 million children who switched over from offline to online in a short span. So, digital acceleration is the second area where, from the people perspective that we keep talking to our customers. The third is reinforcement on infrastructure with all, economic, ecosystem issues that we have around, whether it is Ukraine, whether it is China, India standing to be benefited out of it to some portion, some extent to start with, and I think moving forward in a better situation there. So, penetration into the infrastructure, PLI schemes that are being talked about, which are going to accelerate our manufacturing and industries and overall GDP in itself, and the kind of mind-boggling numbers that we are seeing around. The last one is the entire labor reformation that is in progress. The new labor codes which are about to be around around the corner in terms of rolling out, which also eases the kind of doing business in terms of administration, as well as bringing more employment mix into the process, because all this development is actually layered on availability of human capital, and that's the business we are into. And we constantly keep, when we talk to our customers, in many of our engagement, we talk to them almost a year before even the manufacturing industry is being set up and commenced. So where do we get the talent from? What kind of talent? What kind of training? So there's a lot of the labor code rollout and the formation and formalization that will take care. We will get transmitted through that is an area to definitely focus for. So these are 4 key events for me to start with. So coming out of pandemic, which is unforeseen, and we are just getting better and better day by day. As a country, I think we have handled extremely well. Digital disruptions that are coming into. Third one, focus on infrastructure that government is reinforcing. And fourth one is the labor code and rollout of labor code around, which to ensure that human capital base is really set right for as a launch pad to our next. So I would give a pause here, and I think we'll move on to Q&A and have much more deeper interaction.
Thank you, Mr. Guru Prasad. I think we are very eager to listen to you more in Q&A, especially for a company with that kind of mega size. The people issues, what you talked about, will be of great interest, especially the formulation of new labor code, which is going to get established very shortly.
Right.
So forward. Thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Vaidishwaran. the chairman, vice chairman and managing director of Manipal Education and Medical Group, with huge and vast experience over decades. And earlier he spent a lot of his career in Aisha Group. So I'm also going to ask him something more, little more on manufacturing, which is again his passionate subject. Mr. Vaidishran will talk to us on some of the challenges they've been undergoing in these sectors and the opportunities. Over to you, Mr. Vaidishran, for the intro.
Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, Mr. Parshuram. Thank you, Bangalore Chamber. Mr. Parshuram, I hope everything at the home front gets well soon, and appreciate your joining us despite going through some health crisis in the family. Thank you again. Distinguished panel, I logged in just about when Mr. Gopal Krishnan was finishing his address, and so I was not benefited by his sagacity, but interesting that Mr. Venkatraman talked about the VUCA world. I'm going to use an anecdote from PG Wodehouse, if people in the panel are fans of Wodehouse. Wodehouse had a very interesting description on somebody's knowledge, where he said his knowledge can be written on the rear of a postage stamp. So in a way, I think our own collective predictions of how the world is going to be is as limited, as unknown as what it could be. And the pandemic just sort of brought us to the whole planet to reality. The size and spread of the virus was so large that there was no precedent to learn. The Spanish flu, which everybody talks about, was so many years ago and in a very different world at that point of time. Mr. Venkatraman talked about the Second World War. Yes, in a way, the Second World War had ramifications across the globe, but it was still in a very disconnected world, unlike what we are, where if one part of the world catches cold, somebody else sneezes in the other part of the world. It's that connected that we are in today. The issue which really I want to bring in addition to what the other panelists have brought out, is more the human angle. The COVID, in my view, most of us on the panel and the audience and everyone, we've all unfortunately lost a loved one, a friend, an acquaintance, which has been a very sobering, humbling, bringing us to stark reality, sort of, the way things are happening. In a conventional industry circle, all of us, we would have seen elements like care and compassion, empathy, taking over precedences of performance and competence. We're all jarred out of our beds when you see helplessness all over, when you see sickness all over, when you know that you are not in a position to help. This really, in a way, while it looks very quixotic, I think it bonded all of us like never before. The human race became one. We all started to look at in each country, how can we help each other? I mean, as what Mr. Parshuram said, the experience that we have had in the 3 waves in our healthcare system has been so humbling. And so in many occasions, it's been very sad that you have not been in a position to help someone where you know that he or she needs that support, but the system was so overwhelming and it was, breaking out its this thing. So we had this issue. The second element, which I think is going to stay for good, in addition to this whole issue of empathy, people care, wanting to be more together to, let's say, address or even confront the realities of the world, both in the personal level and at the professional level in companies, is this whole issue of work from home. I'm sure many of us have pondered on this. When the COVID hit again, the country, regulations and medical councils just started talking about isolating oneself at home, not being exposed to the others. It was easier said than done. In a typical Indian family, joint families, there is one washroom, there are 6 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I mean, how does one isolate oneself? How does one ensure that the washrooms are not used by anybody else? It's a nightmare to look at a situation. How does a young mother who has a baby isolate herself when there is a COVID that unfortunately she gets into? So these have been issues which I think, as what Mr. Venkatram rightly said, many of these, it will come back to make us see reality for many years to come ahead, and world will be very different. In a way, I think, for those of us who believe in mythology and those of us on supernatural powers, I think there's a reminder coming to us at some point of time saying, guys, just step back and see how you are heading into this world. And I think in a way, while many of us have paid big price on the COVID, that's what it has happened. Look at this work from home from an industry or an office perspective. We are expecting that people should log in at the call. So many of them have issues on internet connectivity. So many of them have living in a single bedroom apartment. There are parents, old parents. There are others at home. But the business people expect people to log in at different times, late in the evenings to match US, let's say, time zones and what have you. We sort of take all this for granted when we are working from an office environment. And then when we get home and look at the work from home, etc., the reality starts dawning on us. So I would think that some of the points that in the address that we are talking of, and some questions what Mr. Prasram said we will address as we go by, two things have come back, in my view, to permanently make an impact in the way we run businesses and hence leadership. One is this whole inclusive empathy, looking at people as people. And I think the COVID, if pre-COVID, if industry was on a point on a 2 or a 3 on a 10, it's moving to a 5 or a 6 on a 10, and it will remain there because they have seen the ills of not having included people as they plan their growth going forward. The second, I think, is most of what has been spoken already, is this digital disruption. I mean, look at a country like India, where I was telling Mr. Pashram yesterday when we were chatting on the structure that, somebody like Manipal, overnight, literally overnight, I had close to 150,000 students across 6 geographies who had to be taught online. There was no student in the classes. The faculty were extremely knowledgeable, etc., but did not realize how do they address a plain board and start talking to them. So we realized that these are challenges which will be there, but the technology made it possible. While we did have, as an example, the vaccine manufacturing in India, which was a big benefit to the country, that we have been able to manage this virus so very well. It is also true that this whole COVID and this technology-based support, and not to belay a point on any other country, but I was filled with pride when we see our certificates come down digitally to us in 30 seconds after we get vaccinated. A friend of mine landed up from the US the other day, and he has a handwritten, believe you me, handwritten certificate scribbled by a doctor, which says that he has been vaccinated, batch 1 and batch 2, etc. And we talk of US being far ahead. I think we are a very country which is sort of, as they say, masochistic in terms of trying to inflict self-pain. We have done some great strides. I think technology has helped us. The pandemic will definitely make things very different to us going forward. But the new normal will be when we embrace people, we embrace technology, and we are prepared to be vulnerable to uncertainties rather than, as a leader, continuing to be brave. There's a very thin line between being brave and foolhardy. So I would rather that we accept that we are, like what Mr. Venkatram again said, of a VUCA world, that I do not know what's going to happen. So let me, along with my team, go and explore. Maybe a better way for a leader to be. But as again, I'll pause with this. When we did Q&A, we'll do. But thanks again for this opportunity, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Registran. I think really opened a new eye. I think from India perspective, our cultural values, ethical values, and the family, kind of cult. I think the challenges that the country we have been going through, and the kind of new opportunities which we look forward. to learn from you. So my first question to the panelists is to Mr. Venkatram. Mr. Venkatram, would you like to just touch upon this COVID has, as I said, given us a lot of permanent learnings as far as the corporates are concerned. So this is really going to boost the competitiveness of this country. In fact, at least 2 years back, I never imagined the manufacturing companies can work from home. When I used to, propose this idea, people used to laugh. Today it has become a reality. I never thought I'll be able to join a meeting, sitting in the ICU, next to that in the room, at least 2-3 years back. So I think the learnings which are permanent in nature, which the corporates. The second question to you, I also thought I will also touch upon this being a very important question. The corporate governance issues, which has got a huge impact. Because when you say that I'm working from home, we don't know whether I work for home or working from home. I think the trust values, I think the ethical standards, and how do we measure this kind of, aspects? For example, we have a strict labor laws, we have a punch-in, punch-out system in the companies. And now how do we break that and develop a very strong bond of trust and mutual support? I think which is another big challenge. And one thing you talk about the digital transformation. Yeah, when we talk about digital transformation and new technologies also you touched upon. I think India now, I'm told that we are at least getting advanced by at least 10 years in terms of digital technology thanks to COVID. So what kind of strategic advantages India has? And how do you take it forward through using this digital technology? And government is also very proactive in the PLI schemes where they talk about advanced technologies and localization of these technologies. For example, electric cars, then hybrids, batteries, and magnetic drives, and many, many advanced technologies, semiconductors. So would you like to throw upon these three questions? Once again, I repeat, the permanent learnings, then the impact on the corporate governance, and the digital transformation and technological transformations going forward. Over to you, sir.
And boss, how much time do I have? Because it's a very big question. 5 minutes?
Sir, you can touch up. Maybe
yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, because it's 3 in 1.
5 to 6 minutes.
This is like a cassata ice cream. It's got a lot of. Well, let me first start broader, and then perhaps we can get into specifics. I think the first thing that I would hasten to add is, I'm not yet saying that we are in the new normal or the next normal. My personal view is, at this point in time, business leaders are in what we call the interim normal. That is, we are all, like you look at investment itself, right? Every one of us has got an investment plan ready. We know what we want to do. But nobody's really going to the bank and borrowing and putting up the plant in the ground or whatever, right? Because you don't know what demand is going to be like. You don't know what the other uncertainties are. For the point that Mr. Vaitishwaran made as well, that we really don't have, anything beyond what's on the back of a postage stamp to look at this point in time. So therefore, when you look at a business leader today, my personal view is the first change you need in an interim model, interim normal, is a mindset change. I think Mr. Gopal Krishnan also talked about it as one of his items. When he talked about leadership, I just noted it down. He did mention the 3 columns, right? Mindset, behavior, and actions. And ultimately, it all boils down to mindset. And I think the most important mindset change that business leaders need today is to think beyond yesterday, move beyond today, and look towards a non-linear tomorrow. Because the future is not linear. So we've got to look at where the opportunities lie. Mr. Parshuraman spoke, for example, if I illustrate this, he spoke about EVs, right, coming in. So if I were to think in a linear fashion, I say, okay, China, then I say, okay, China +1, how do I replace his supply chains? But if I think in a non-linear manner, I will say, okay, what are the new areas coming up? EV is a new area. Fine, it may take 5 years, it may take more. We also don't know whether it will be hydrogen or whether EV, or how long it will come to phase out one and bring in the other. But certainly there will be new supply chains that will get built for EV. So why can't Indian entrepreneurs be at the forefront of what we do on the EV supply chain. It's going to take time. It's going to take investment. The volumes will come over a period of time. But certainly, it's not a question of eliminating an existing competitor. It's about getting into a new area and looking in terms of how you can develop. So therefore, entrepreneurs will not only look in terms of how they recapture revenue they lost during the pandemic, but also expand into new opportunities. Some of these are interim measures. I mean, like you find it, for example, now with inflation coming, you're finding all our, consumer goods people doing it, right? I mean, on a lighter note, you look at a toothpaste tube. If you're cautious enough to look at it, it went from say 150 grams to 130 grams, right? Then you also find that they made the nozzle bigger so that you consume more, and they also increase the price. So, I mean, some of these things are innovative things you do in the short term, but that only sees you that far. What you have to also look beyond is to say, what is the requirement of that future? So I think that, therefore, what permanently changes logically would follow from what you believe are not just incremental changes you will make in your organizations, but what are the non-linear ways in which you will grow your business tomorrow. In this, certain things are here to last. Say, for example, let's start with just the future of work. Now, when we talk about the future of work, it's actually three parts to it. It's the alignment of work itself, which is what is a major topic of discussion during the pandemic. The second is the workforce and how you deal with the workforce. And the third is the workplace. What would be the workplace of the future? And while all three fit into the future of work, it is also interconnected. So while today we say, fine, hybrid work is good. If I say in the service industry, I have to look at it, I say, okay, hybrid is good, but I don't know whether hybrid is here to stay forever. It broke certain old orthodoxies. In the old days, we always had hybrid working. We always told our people, you can sit at home and work 2 days a week. But nobody did it because there was a stigma attached. And women in the workforce to whom we actually opened this out didn't do it because then you would be targeted as a person who is actually working from home. But it broke that whole intent that if you work from home, you're a kamchor, right? Because all of us work from home. In fact, some of us continue to work from home. So therefore, you broke a very important barrier to say, yes, you can work from home and it's not a crime, it's not a sin. In fact, it may be a pragmatic thing to do. And even as we get back to work, we have flexi hours and you can say that 2 days a week I'll work from home, right? However, in our case, for example, we found that 60% of our workforce, how do you define home? They were actually staying in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So when you tell them, come back to work 3 days a week, it may or may not work because he's actually coming from Raipur, Bilaspur, Nagpur, Chandigarh, Lucknow, Indore, and other places, right? And then he's either in Delhi or he's in Mumbai, or if he's from Mysore, he will be in Bangalore. So the question then arose, what do you do in such situations? Because you have to also keep these people in the workforce. They're people who have been trained by you, have worked for you for 6 to 10 years, and who want to continue to work for you. But it's just that they don't feel safe enough to say that I want to come back to the city, take up a PG accommodation. Prices have gone up in terms of rentals. Secondly, you don't want to stay in joint accommodation. You want to stay securely. Thirdly, if you have to work from home, you need a quiet place to work. To the point that Mr. Vaitishwaran made, you really don't know how many other people are in the home, right? In fact, one of our biggest nightmares is that, you may be co-sharing the house with a guy from Deloitte, KPMG, and PwC, right? So how do you even maintain your client confidentiality? So there's so many issues involved in all this. So therefore, the second point was, should we also be looking in terms of moving to tier 2 and tier 3 cities on a more permanent basis? Now, this again brings up other related issues like infrastructure. What's the government doing it about? One is the digital infrastructure, the other is the physical infrastructure. But I think a major permanent change that arises from this, I can't say hybrid working is permanent, but the one thing I will certainly say is going to be permanent is that you will find that the move of services industry to tier 2 and tier 3 is a reality. That's going to happen and that will be transformative. Think of Bangalore, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. Think of Hyderabad 15, 20 years ago. You will find that there will be other cities that will benefit from the fact that wealth will be created in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So I think that is one that I would pull out. The second is the whole issue on the digital transformation. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, largely we talk about it in terms of what we do with the way we do our business or the way in which we serve our customers or delight our customers, right? Now, there is so much more, and I think you touched upon it in the automotive industry, Mr. Parasuraman, when you talked about IoT and everything else. There's so much more that can be done. For example, we recently advised a client in terms of how you can think in terms of whether you can rent out tires instead of selling tires, because you know the performance of the tires on the road. That was something we could not have thought about 3 years ago, or did not do 3 years ago. You are implementing software implementation, whether it's Oracle, SAP, across the country and indeed across the world. 60–70% of the workforce that does that sits in India. It's something which is much harder. Today, you don't have to worry too much about whether, you know, the number of H-1B visas you get, for example, right? The way you used to in the past. But for the individual companies that look at digital transformation, it is on production, it is on the sales side, it is on the customer satisfaction and experience side. But most importantly, you have to do it on the talent side. Talent analytics is very critical. You need to understand what, I mean, today, despite all the good that we have done, Mr. Vaitishwaran, whether it is in terms of caring for our people during the pandemic, people caring for each other during the pandemic, the insurance that you gave them, the cover you gave them, the protection you gave their families, the reality is the moment India goes into revive and thrive, most industries, I do not know about manufacturing, I'm not so familiar there, but most service industries are seeing attrition of 30 to 40%, depending on what the skills are. So this is still a very mobile workforce. It's a young workforce. And therefore, again, creating loyalty is going to be an important issue. And I go beyond that to say, how do you create culture? Many of us have done well during the pandemic. We ourselves have added about 10,000 people during this period. And the one, if somebody asks you the famous CEO question, what keeps you awake at night? What keeps me awake at night is that 50% of my people haven't really experienced the true Deloitte culture because they haven't come into your office, right? So I think the biggest issue is that when we look at digital transformation and change in the way in which we work, the way we execute our work, we have to look at the people side of it. One point which is very well brought out was empathy, but I think the bigger issue that I will also bring out is culture. How do we look to the culture of the organization? Which brings me to the third, permanent learning. I think the introspection that people did in the warmth of their homes during the pandemic has, as you rightly said, made them reflect in a more spiritual manner, some with the spirit and some, you know, with an external, spirit. But the spirit that came out over there is, what is my purpose? What is life's purpose? And I think this whole issue of an organization having a purpose has become far more relevant today than ever before. I think a permanent change in mindset now of organizations is to define their purpose, to attract the youth of this country to come and work with them. I think everybody wants purpose in what they do. And that then brings us to all the other issues that lead on to the third point you asked me about, which is, say, governance. In a purpose-driven organization, your youth, your young below 30 population, your millennials, expect you to have a voice on what you do about climate and sustainability. They want you to commit to net zero. They want you to have diversity and inclusion. And these are all new areas that we bring on the agenda. So I think that again is something, when I look at the whole spectrum of change to governance, to digital and opportunities ahead, I think this is the great time for us in this interim normal to take steps. Perhaps I would stop at this, Mr. Parasuraman. Thank you.
Brilliant, sir. I think you literally linked the three areas, the permanent learnings and the digital transformation and the governance. I think from a people perspective and largely from a cultural change, mindset change. And also I like your non-linear tomorrow. I think how do we prepare our mindset for the non-linear tomorrow? I think, and also product as a service going forward. I'm sure that a lot of key takeaways from your session. Now I would ask Mr. Guru Prasad. Very interesting to know, sir. I think you are managing one of the largest manpower fleet in the country, almost close to 422,000 and odd, and 3,000 plus clients in 10 countries. So I would like to understand, sir, how did you manage the motivation? I think rightly spelled by Mr. Venkat. I think how do you manage the motivation of people on this changing points? Like most of the contract recruitment, 70-80% of the today's employment is going in the contract labor, and their span is hardly 3 months to 6 months, anything, and the attrition rates are close to 40%. And given this kind of uncertainties, again working from home, I think we have values, trust-based systems, and corporate governance, cybersecurity, many challenges. So, your organization, how did you manage this kind of challenges? And what kind of learnings this pandemic has brought in, which are permanent in nature?
Sure.
Over to you.
Sure. So, first and foremost, majority of our workforce, our field workforce, whether it is pandemic, non-pandemic, they literally have to be there. And even during peak post first lockdown of 60 days, or post that first lockdown was relaxed, people were literally there. Either they are frontline workers, they are managing the facilities, or they're managing retail outlets, or they're doing the sellout program. So, actual frontliners. So, a couple of things that we have seen. The pandemic has increased trend of employers playing bit of expanded role in their, for their employees, starting from financial planning, physical and mental well-being, which was not talked about in past. When we used to talk to our customers, we used to always have availability of a person at a store or at an outlet, but beyond that, the conversation used to be very limited. First time we started experiencing a very different set of conversations that, how do we support them financially? How do we ensure that people get their benefits, or for example, government interim gave benefits on getting their loan on PF, or if they want to take some benefit out of it. How do we as a secondary employer and primary employer help people to get those benefits? And how can we ensure that their mental well-being, because again, being frontliner and most affected, I would say at least about 65-70% of our people in wave one itself, they had an impact. So it was extremely heartening for us to see and ensure that they also come out of it slowly, and we support them. We got various we got them counseling sessions, we got them additional insurance. So we jointly worked a lot. So I think it's a very different thought process that is coming from the employer perspective. So slowly from that, we moved on to wave two. We became slightly better in terms of handling the situation. Wave three was, I think we were dare enough to head on and handle it much better. Slowly, what we are witnessing is the entire, there is a transition that is happening from a kind of design of, every employer thinks of design of efficiency. How much we can get the productivity out of an individual, or how much more we can do. I think from there is a slow shift moving into kind of designing the entire platform for a kind of resilience. So if something were to happen, how do we in such eventualities ensure that still the sale goes on, still people continue to buy. During wave one, even the entire food and e-commerce deliveries were stopped. It was practically not available. But from design of efficiency, slowly moving into designing for resilience, I think that's a key way that we are seeing most of our customers. We work with them intensely to see that, okay, if something were to happen, how do we ensure that seamless activities happen? So again, it starts from, whether it is a flexi time or, from compared to fixed time earlier, no fixed desk to employees. You can walk in, you can walk out. So it's not easy for a company, right? Earlier people are used to having a set workstations and have all their artifacts on the desk and table. Everything is gone now. So when they start coming back to office, which is in ITITS, which should happen very soon, the other areas are already working. You will not have fixed desk. They will check in, come in whenever they want to come in. They can come in, pick up whichever desk, whichever system. It's a big shift in mindset and culture. And Also, the cross-cultural work environment is extremely critical. So, I mean, if to do a transactional work, you can do it from anywhere. But if you want to do transformational work, you'll have to interact, you'll have to huddle in a room, one has to interact with multiple functions. Now, seamlessly doing that from remote is also difficult. So, aligning that in line to ensuring that the way I was explaining, designing for efficiency to designing for kind of resilience, it's extremely critical to see how cross-functional teams work together. So there are n number of tools that are available in place now, which was probably a year before, which was not used. I don't think so. Many of us even used video conferencing. We used to love traveling and going and meeting people, but now the first priority is changed. And a lot of collaboration tools. And this in last, from our first session, first breakout, a lot of tools that are some remote working tool is something which is extremely productive. E-learning is, again, on top of entertainment, virtual reality, everybody spoke about it. Pharmacy, it was completely non-existing in terms of delivery. There are very rigid rules, very rigid process, relaxing that, logistics, virtual healthcare, which was probably, not acceptable, right? In the sense, we hardly used to use it as a channel, but today, 400,000 of our people have access to virtual healthcare on their mobility application. They can contact a doctor irrespective of which site they are at or which geography they are at. Contactless technologies, which was non-existent. There was hardly any contactless technologies that we used in past. Freelancing and gig economy was non-existing. What we are seeing is there are a lot of new mix which are coming into, and at the same time, government is also bringing policies to recognize them and make them as a part of mix of employment. Gig economy was completely unheard. While we had milk vendors, we had paper vendors, they all are nothing but gig economies. But slowly getting that formalized is also a kind of futuristic in the way we look at it. So you will have permanent employment, you will have contractual employment, then you have short term, and then you have gig economy coming in. So all in all, it can only accelerate. These are I would say a launch pad. Going forward, the way economy could slowly open up. Whenever the PLI schemes comes, whether it is 25, again, it's tough, right? So the PLI scheme, what is announced is say it's 5% of benefit, which runs into few lakh crores. But to spend that, there has to be a 40 lakh crore kind of money that has to go out, and it will take time. But I'm sure when it happens, all this will come together, whether it is the kind of productivity tools, e-learning, virtual realities, all of that will come together as a kind of launchpad for us to accelerate and embrace as we move forward. So, in nutshell, I think employment is really base of all of this. Accessibility to talent, right talent, is extremely critical. So, getting focus onto that and getting e-learning and tools is extremely critical for us. To overarch all of this, there has to be a culture of perpetual learning, and it all depends on how we strengthen our skill and skill development. So first and foremost, we have to earn and cement trust of our employees as an employer. Second, there has to be a clear communication. I think that is extremely critical. Third, we need to have focus on outcome more than number of hours that somebody, one has to spend to complete their job. Fourth is all about leadership action and, the kind of words that we stick to and execute. So, that would be my view.
Very nicely put, Mr. Srinivasan. I think the cross-cultural diversity and the design for efficiency rather than design for more of a design for resilience, which is going to be a new normal, and outcome rather than the kind of quantity. I think you nicely put it. We want to ask you several questions because it's a very interesting and hot subject. All corporates would love to hear from you. maybe on a separate occasion due to the kind of time constraints. Thank you so much. Now I go to another interesting speaker, Mr. Vaitishwaran. Sir, we have been hearing so much of educational reforms. Thanks to the new education policy, thanks to the flexibility and the virtual universities, virtual learning, what Mr. Guru Prasad was talking. I think there's going to be a new normal in terms of education. I think students have an option to learn anything from anywhere, any part of the world. We're in a global village. So this is a great paradigm shift in terms of e-learning process. And also what kind of impact that this has brought in the education sector. And going forward, how this transformation would go to the next level of breakthrough is one question. And another question I wanted to ask you is sustainability. You know, today with the manufacturing attaining a new momentum with thanks to all the integrated technologies, what I mentioned, sustainability is another thing that we learned from COVID. So in a country like India, we now talked about sanitation, hygiene of this order. For people wearing masks, nobody could even imagine. Today, it's becoming a very good normal, I would say. Still, we have quite a way to go. But I think I can't even imagine people wearing masks even at this stage. I think that's a great change that has happened for the country. So what are your perspectives, Mr. Vaitishwaran?
Thanks, Prashur. So I think excellent, views both from Mr. Venkatraman and Guru. The common theme being that both are optimistic that things would be only better for us post the pandemic, which itself, I think, coming from senior leaderships is a reflection of how things will augur for us. So taking on from that, one other dimension which really is again close to my heart, which may not directly fit into your question, but I'll take a minute to just make all of us ponder on it. We talked about employees, we talked about companies, we must also talk of our children. Our children in the age group, particularly in the age group of, let's say, 4 to 8 or 4 to 12 or 4 to 13. I mean, look at how traumatic it has been for them on not having gone to school for the last 2.5 years. Some of the kids have never seen a school and they're already 6.5 years old. So some of these, as corporate citizens, we must take cognizance of and see how we could, make good even partially the experiences that these children have lost, so that things come back to some level of normalcy to them, because these could otherwise, without sounding too negative, have a very serious impact on the future of our people as these children grow with having missed the opportunity. And again, just other point which Mr. Venkatram talked about of culture, which I completely agree. I mean, we are reading, all of us are reading stories about children, senior students having gone to an Ivy League school, not even having been there for one day. They have done the entire 2-year program in Chicago booth and proudly put out a certificate of completion, not knowing in the least that part of their education was to be in the ecosystem with other students in the campus, learn, make mistakes, make friends, chill out in the evenings with friends, talk to your faculty for questions. These are some of those touch and feel experiences, which in a way, I think Mr. Venkatram talked about as culture for each organization. These are some things we must grapple with going forward. But quickly going back to your two questions, on the first one on impact on education. If you look at education and more particularly higher education, the online, the faculty challenge that I talked about, student engagement, learner outcomes, assessments. I mean, we have done in the last year, just as an interest for all of you, 5.5 million online proctored exams in a year in India. Pre-COVID, we might have done maybe 50,000, and again, as an example, you talked about I think Guru talked about each of his 400,000 employees having a digital access to healthcare. Pre-COVID, if I had asked my head of digital strategy in healthcare on how many teleconsultings will you do, we were, let's say, doing in Manipal, in Bangalore, around 25 in a day, in a month. And he would have done his extrapolation and come back and said that I will do maybe 500. He can't think beyond that because it was 25. And in the COVID period, this 25 went up to 10,000. 10,000. And post-COVID, it has not gone back to 25. It's still at a very healthy 6,000, which means that people have accepted that it is okay to do teleconsulting and avoid going to hospitals, which maybe they learned it the hard way because of COVID. But now they realize the advantage that their engagement or FaceTime with the doctor is that much more personal. They can avoid going and sitting in those crowded hospitals and possibly getting exposed to other infection, etc. And then if there is a need for them to get admitted for an inpatient, they would do. But that could be a choice that they could go through. But coming back to this, what would it mean? I think essentially what it means is, again, as an example, let's say, and I will indulge on this, Mr. Venkatram, for a minute. Let's say Mr. Venkatram is a specialist in taxes. I'm not very familiar on what is your area of specialization. Let us say that he is an authority on direct taxes. Earlier, there's only so much he could do to Deloitte incumbents in terms of taking classes. Maybe he will go and visit across the country or the globe. He would have impacted maybe, sir, 1,000 people. And today, because you have a global access to teaching from your place of convenience, students in Barabanki in UP have access to the best content and best faculty across the globe. And this is there to stay. There is no question that this will go away. Content today is no longer a differentiation. Mr. Google has all the content that we want. The way the faculty experience, the way we engage with the students. So people have realized in the education space that if you are in a position to engage with your student the way he or she wants, that is the way you will develop. And there is no way that you can force it your way of teaching. You know, the chair and the chalk, as they say, for the teacher in the class, is not gone away, but it is supplemented with higher level of education. In all my academies today, we practice flipped classes where 30% of the faculty load is already taken and preloaded onto tablets. All they need to do is when they come to class is to engage with the faculty and intelligently debate, discuss on real-time cases, issues, pick the faculty's brain, pick their experience, and they go back much more richer. If I have to learn the rule number so-and-so of IFRS, I could sit down at home and learn it. I don't need somebody to tell me how to learn it. But if Mr. Venkatram is going to help me understand the nuances of the law in the class, that is much more important. So I think the way of teaching, the pedagogy, the instructional design, the adaptation or faster adoption of technology is an irreversible path today. It's irreversible. So you will see going on and on. You talked about the education policy. Let's look at the statistics for 30 seconds. India has something like 75,000 colleges. It has around 1,000 universities. If our gross enrollment ratio as a country has to go up from 25% to, let's say, mid-30s, we need a college to be put up every day, and we need a university to be put up every 5 days in the next 5 years. Practically impossible. We'll become a manufacturing. You may like it, Mr. Parasram, but we will just end up putting bricks and mortars. We will not have faculty. But I want one-to-many faculty. I don't want 1 to 20. I want an expert in faculty to teach maybe 500 people, maybe 1,000 people. So I think these disruptions are there to stay. The new education policy, in my view, considered view, is a very, very far-reaching impact that it would have in our country. It is allowing students to step up at every stage. After their class 2, they can do 2 years, they can walk away with a certification. They can do, after 2 years, they walk away with a diploma. They stay on, come back, and after work, they do a 3rd year, they get a degree. They again go back to work because the family needs. They come back, they get a master's or an honors. And you're right, end of the day, I will bank all my credits. I'll do 2 credits in Bharati Vidya Bhavan, what Mr. Gopal Krishnan is talking of, in terms of, Gandhian economics as an example, and I'll do Python from maybe Ivy League school. I'll put all these credits together, and somebody in a virtual university will give me a degree. This is happening. This is real time. All of us in our life is going to see these changes happen, because there is no other way that you can bring economic educational parity across the globe for a country, in our case of 1.3 billion people. You want everybody to grow, you must supplement it and use the power of technology, use the power of digital to a level which is unheard. I would say this is there to stay. Two quick points to wrap up. The other one you talked about is on the sustainability, and I'll again go back to the point that he raised the youngsters about. So on one end, you have employees pushing back the system to say, guys, carbon credit is not a joke. We are not going to allow you to do something to burn, cut trees. It is important to us. So there is a pressure. And then there's another pressure which is coming on a private equity guy coming and telling me that unless you show me that you have a good ESG governance and a dashboard and a person, I'm not going to put money into your company. So it's like a Hobson's choice. Some people will embrace it genuinely. Some people will look at it as a checkbox. But I think ESG is there to stay. It is going to make us more inclusive. It is going to make us more, as you said, diversified. It is going to make good governance into the system. And sustainability as a way of life, not as a choice, will happen. The last learning, I think, across not just education or healthcare on this that you asked of, that is something called a Cadet's Law, which I learned in my business school way back, which says that costs which tend to be variable when business is going up suddenly become fixed when the business is down. Most of us realize that when the COVID hit us, that your costs remain where it was, but your top line was shrinking. So I think everybody went down with the scissors for a nice haircut. They pruned things that was not required. They digitized things which could be possible. And today, I think, like you said, Mr. Parsuram, the country is and the industry is much more leaner and meaner and hungry to take on those, unsatisfied demand as we go by. And if we continue to keep the people focus as leaders, keep the sustainability focus in this thing, I think the world is ours to conquer. Thanks very much for this time.
Okay, thank you, Vaiti. Thanks, Parasuraman. Thanks, Mr. Guruprasad. Thanks, Venkat, for your great session. It's a phenomenal learning for all of us, the form of technology, digital, and what culture and various aspects of it. So we have come to the final end of the session. Thank you so much once again to all the panelists and moderator Parasu. Ravindran, would you like to display thanks message and mementos for all of us, virtual mementos, and then we'll be going to the next session immediately after that. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
The only difference is that it is just not a digital memento. We'll be sending this memento to each one of you. So it's just not a digital. Which will be moderated by my colleague and my dear friend Tapti Ghosh, partner Deloitte, and she's the co-chair of Direct Tax Expert Committee. She'll be moderating the session. Tapti is a chartered accountant and being a partner in Deloitte. She has got three eminent panelists. Pankajam Sridevi. Tapti, considering the time, I myself introduce the panelist within one line, and then you can take the moderation session immediately. Pankajam Sridevi is the former president of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, a very good friend of mine. She is also a recipient of various awards. Recently, she was coming into the top 10 technologies women leaders from India. And she is also a great supporter of increasing diversity. And she is also chairman of last year Women Leadership Awards and current Women Leadership Awards. Welcome, Pankajam. Thank you so much. We have next panelist, Ms. Sonali Kulkarni. Absolutely diversified in all matters. She had a graduation in zoology, studied law, chartered accountant, CA and CPA, but completely into manufacturing, president of Fanuc India Limited. It shows that a chartered accountant who is not only good in numbers, but also do good in manufacturing. Sonali Kulkarni is an expert, is a committee member of Management Council and president and CEO of Fanuc India Private Limited. Thanks, Sonali, for accepting the and being part of it. The next panelist is Nirupal Shankar, Executive Director, Brigade Enterprises. She has been a great supporter of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Today morning, many people would have seen a photograph and the news item in Economic Times where she is considered as one of the top 40, so for less than 40 in India as a young leaders. Thank you, Nirupa, for joining this today's panel session. Over to you, Tapti, and taking it to take it forward, Tapti.
Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, Shekhar. I think Nirupa's had to log off. Her flight is in the next 15 minutes. So we'll have to. Nirupa, are you still there?
I'm there. I think Pankajam had to log off.
Pankajam is logging off.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Pankajam had to log off.
Yeah.
Apologies, Nirupa. Sonali is on the line. Sonali, can you there? Great.
Yeah.
So thanks, Shekhar, for the introduction to the panel. And very, very good evening to all of you. Pleasure to moderate this panel consisting of stalwarts from diverse backgrounds.
Sorry, we can't hear you. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you very well. It's coming a little
No,
scratchy.
it was me too. Tapti, it's getting clipped.
Tapti, I'm also saying same panel. Probably need to just see your line, Tapti.
Okay, just give me a minute. I'm going to log in from my cell phone. Apologies, everyone. The pain of logging in from home.
This is better, Tapti. The
very
last
clear.
line, what you spoke was better. Probably you need to be in the same position what you spoke the last line.
All right.
Yeah, this is better.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yes, the combined experience in this very small panel, to say the least, is really enormous. Earlier today, we heard Mr. Gopal Krishnan on the importance of learning from the experiences of leaders and sharing those for the next generation. So today, I'll bring to you lessons on leadership through stories from our guests. So stay put as it comes to be quite an experience. Shekhar's done the experience, the introductions, but let me just turn it over to Nirupa and Sonali for some little known facts.
Tapti, you need to come closer to the mic. You need to come closer to the mic. The line is going on and off. Yeah, just try.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think maybe switching off the video
yeah.
is good.
I've switched over to my mobile.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
If I could just hand it over to Nirupa and to Sonali for some quick tidbits about yourselves, some little known facts that you're unique.
So, Dani, do you want to take that?
Okay,
All right,
sure.
I can, whatever.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Nirupa. I've been an executive director with Brigade for these last few years. Overall, my experience with Brigade has been 13 years, but I started off as a management trainee, and I'm a second-gen promoter. But of course, my father wanted me to sort of go through the ranks. So it took almost 10 years of work experience at Brigade before I was given a title like executive director put on the board. My passion lies in hospitality, but right now I oversee the retail, office, and hospitality verticals of Brigade, along with the real estate technology. I love writing. I write a lot for various newspapers, journals, just because I enjoy doing that. I like speaking in general because I've spoken at 2 TEDx's, and that's been a great experience. I play poker and I'm a triathlete. I exercise a lot because I find it relaxing. So I participate in a lot of triathlons. And yes, I really enjoy the real estate space because I believe there is so much to be done. There's so much of innovation that can be brought in. And contrary to what most people think, I think you can make waves and splashes being a woman in this male-dominated space.
Great. Thank you so much, Nirupa. Sonali?
That is so impressive, Nirupa. Really, congratulations.
Thanks.
Hello, I am Sonali, and as my old friend Shekhar said, I work for FANUC, which serves the manufacturing industry. Yes, my background is liberal arts, and then I realized that you can't make a living, so I went ahead and did the only thing available at that time, which was a CA, and so on. And I've worked in various CA firms, starting with Ferguson's in Bombay many years ago. And for the last 24 years, I've been working with FANUC. It's a little known company in the general world, and but in its own world, we are leaders. So we are in factory automation, we make industrial robots, and we take pride in the fact that we support India's manufacturing industry altogether from a core perspective. We make CNCs, which is at the heart of every single machine that makes everything that moves. Personally, I love animals. I believe very, very strongly in the planet, and I read, and I've been in Bangalore for the last 20 years. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonali. And from my experience with you over the years, I know that you're really passionate about the country, the people, really working at the grassroots, right? Okay, I'll give it a go by. I think the first question that I would pose to both of you is to give us a brief of your journey through stories, right? Of where you are today, up to where you are today, and what do you aspire to be in the near to long term? Sonali, do you want to start?
Sure. My journey, I mostly touched upon it just a few seconds ago, Tapti, but yeah. Yes, working for the manufacturing industry, not something I had imagined I would do, but it has been great fun. And I started working at FANUC in Japan, and that was about 24 years ago. It was a great change. Until then I had worked just in India and the United States, which are, we feel we know those countries better, and Japan was so different. But a great learning experience, very different from what tourists to Japan, the sushi lovers and all that, the manga lovers encounter. But it was a fabulous experience, and in fact, one of my most liberal, the most liberal boss I have ever had was the founder of FANUC, who legendary samurai, harsh, tough, and so on. But I don't know, for some reason he was colorblind. He couldn't see gender or race or educational background, because FANUC doesn't hire anybody except engineers and so on. And he gave me space, and it has been a good journey. I have been in India for the last 21 years, and yeah, together with FANUC India, we support Indian machine builders, all the automotive industry, general industry, and so on.
What do you
aspire? I don't know if that answers. What do I aspire? Oh, yeah. Look, at work, considering that our government has announced so many focused initiatives for the first time to support manufacturing, particularly the PLI schemes, which the earlier panelists also talked about. And it's entirely to encourage manufacturing and to make us globally competitive, to make us export more, and to raise our standards, all of that. 2 lakh crores. And 80% of that is engineering manufacturing. So I aspire very much to be a part of enabling Indian manufacturers to enter the global field. Now, many Indian manufacturers already are on the global field. It is not that we are not, but not on the scale and not at the height at which we should be and which we could be. So that is one of my very dearly held objectives or aspirations. I also hope and try very hard in my daily work, whether personally or as a person working at FANUC, to make sure that every action we take should, we think about the planet, okay? In a small way, in a big way, we must think about the planet. And I'm lucky that FANUC has been doing this actually for the last 29 years. So that has been good. And it is very important. I just picked up Mr. Bill Gates' new book, the one about averting climate disaster. So it's not a small subject anymore, and it's become very fashionable. Everybody talks about it. It was rather unpopular until recently. And I aspire to make a real difference, not the greenwashing that goes on, but a real difference. That would make it. And a third, if I'm allowed to, would be to find ways to get livelihood to India's youth, to India, because the charmed circle to which we belong and which we address through BCIC, we all have a surfeit of jobs and we're fine, but I think we have about crores, hundreds of crores who are in very great difficulty. And we must, I would like to, but I have done nothing there. I aspire to contribute.
Love to see you go through that journey, Sonali. Looking forward, and I'm going to come back to you on the sustainability and the environment part of it with specific examples as we go along. Over to you, Nirupa.
Yeah, thank you. You know, my journey, I'm typical Bangalore, born and brought up in Bangalore, grown up here, but decided to go to the US for my undergrad. Didn't know what I wanted to do. So when you don't know what you want to do, you do economics because it's the major of the undecided. So I did that for 4 years in university. Again, since I didn't know what to do, I did consulting because when you don't know what you want to do, you do consulting so that you get to experience different industries, solve different problems. And actually that helped narrow down my passion, which I realized was in hospitality. I really love working with hotels. I find them very dynamic, and I think problem solving for a hotel is like solving a jigsaw puzzle. You know, a lot of pieces have to come together for it to work. So I did a few classes from New York University while I was working with Ernst & Young. And then I decided to do my master's at Cornell in hospitality real estate. And then I moved to Bangalore after a year because Brigade was just setting up its hospitality practice. So since 2009, we've been setting up that hotel practice. We grew it to about 10 hotels. But in the middle, I set up a couple of my own restaurants, part of the Brigade portfolio, because I just love food and beverage. And then I went on a couple of maternity breaks. And every time I realize, every time I go on a maternity break, you know, like I have some euphoric or some euphoria moment where I realize that, hey, I can do something else with my career or take it to another level. So contrary to what most people believe that, you know, maternity break should or sometimes do result in the end of your career, for me, it actually helps spur it along because I started Asia's first real estate tech accelerator. After my first maternity leave, I moved into office and retail post that. So I think, and after the second one, I realized, you know, you have to, there's so much you can do, but if you have this one life, you should do what you love, do more of what you love. So I think as each break has taught me that, has allowed me to sort of sit back, assess where my career is going, what is the kind of impact I want to make, and help me take the right action towards that. In terms of what I aspire to be or to do, I think, you know, development in any city, right, it's putting a lot of pressure, like Sonali said, on the environment. And whether you like it or not, development is going to happen. So the important thing is to develop in a responsible manner, you know, like find ways to create projects that are zero carbon footprint or carbon neutral, or see if you can even make, if you can be carbon positive. So that is one aspect. And also for me, I think technology is a passion because I do think that real estate does work in a very, there's not any major disruption that's happened in the last 100 years. You know, construction has been happening like it's always been happening. And so I would love to see if there's a way to disrupt it. So when a lot of times people ask me, right, how do you manage in a male dominated space? So I always say, I'm not here to manage it, I'm here to disrupt it. So I'm hoping that some of our real estate tech startups in our accelerator can actually bring that change about.
Great, thanks, Nirupa. amazing ideas, and it's great how you've been able to, the example on the maternity and how you've taken many steps forward beyond that is itself inspirational. If I could stay on with you, over the last couple of days in my conversations, in fact, with both of you, I realized that you've had mentors and sponsors that have changed your lives, and similarly, you would possibly have stories of how you have changed somebody else's life. It could be on the personal front, it could be, of course, in the corporate life. And of course, a good leader makes a good leader. So any examples you can, give to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a second-gen promoter, or entrepreneur. So I've been given a wonderful platform by my father, who set up this company, which is 35 years old. And there's a lot you can do when that company has a reputation of credibility and trustworthiness, right? I mean, so there is no baggage you come with, it's all positive. It's a very positive platform to start with. So obviously a lot of credit would go to my father. He's my father, he's my boss, and he does a wonderful job of balancing both. And I think anybody who knows him would say he's a man who stands for a lot of hard work, humility, and integrity. And those are values that he has tried to imbibe in my sister and I. My mom, she was actually Bangalore's first stockbroker in the stock exchange, a female stockbroker. And she has taken on various responsibilities throughout her life without the so-called qualified training for it. She's set up 3 schools as part of our foundation. She's been in advertising. She's gotten to interior designing when it was required. So she's just a woman who's stepped up to whatever task was sort of brought to her to handle. And I think she's been very brave about that. And my parents have just been the biggest influence on me. I mean, there's nobody else, honestly, that I can think of. I think the values that they have taught me, right? I mean, again, like I'm saying, hard work, humility, and integrity. Those are the values they have tried to imbibe. And one thing I try to do, I mean, when you're given such a wonderful platform, right? It's what you do with it that really matters. I mean, you can ruin it, you can take it to the next level. There's so many, or you can abuse it too. So for one aspect that I have tried to do is to try, and I actually keep a note of this myself, because maybe I have impacted other people, but it's not, but I don't know sometimes about it. But one thing I consciously try to do is to actively help out somebody I know who cannot help me back. So every month, like, I'm not saying every day I'm making a great positive impact, but at least if it's not every week, at least once a month, can you help somebody that cannot help you back, or you're helping that person without any expectation of any help back? So it's actually something I actively try to do, because people are always seeking your time or expertise or advice, or and I don't mean this in financial support at all. I just mean, can you go out of your way to help somebody? So I just have it as my internal personal goal. It could be a friend, it could be a friend's friend, it could be somebody who reaches out to you to see if I can help at least one person per month that I know cannot help me back or have no expectation. So that's my internal goal for myself.
Nirupag, good learnings for us. In fact, Sonali, can I ask the same question of you?
Anything for you, Takti. So yeah, talking about inspiration, right?
Yeah. Who's been your, or who had?
I think, like Nirupa said, even though I'm not from a promoter or whatever, but I think parents cast a huge influence on all of us. Yeah. So exactly the same, or families do. So I'm lucky to have been part of a liberal family, and I have twin brothers, and I was treated just the same and encouraged, and it was basically a scholarly middle-class family. And I must say at this point that my brothers, who were slightly older, but they were clearly the leaders, they were as, what would I say? We didn't know the word then, but I would call them egalitarian at heart. So Whether it was learning to shoot using that rifle, or my brother taught me when he was going away from India, he gave me his motorcycle. Those days, Hero Honda had just launched CD100. So it was quite a big deal. And yeah, stuff like that. And not just that, these are little fun stories, but in episodes in work life, turns in personal life, whatever. I learned a lot. I got examples of how to deal with things in a very positive way, in a equal way. The word equal itself wasn't there because there wasn't unequal, stuff like that. And then I think we take inspiration from various people along the way, you know. But like I said, my old boss was a great inspiration or a mentor, etc. Currently, the industry I work for, I learn a lot from the customers. I learn from, even I have learned from you, Tapti. So how to be better organized. But how have I inspired people? That's a very tall question, and I absolutely can't answer that. I hope that some of the things I do make an impression on people, and they feel like taking a leaf from my book. But and that is one. But definitely, I agree with Nirupa about, as she said, paying forward. Help somebody else. The help I got from my teachers, from my family, from my old bosses, I cannot return to them, so pay forward.
Yeah. Resonates, Sonali, spent some time with your father, and it's been a fantastic experience. I must thank you for that. If I can go to the next, and you've touched upon this for a bit on sustainability. You know, our teams today consists of a bunch of very young people. They're idealistic. They're concerned about the environment, the sustainability part of it, social responsibility and whatnot. And they look up to you as leaders who live by example, right? So the role models that you are, give us some examples of some of the practices that you've actually put in place in the corporate, in your corporate organizations. And any real life practices.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll start. Yes, I agree that, you know, the millennials of our time today, they do want a larger purpose. They want to know the why, not just the how and the what. So it's very important to also show them the bigger picture, right? Everybody wants to sort of make a positive impact. And in fact, I remember when we had taken a survey and done a voice of the employee rather, to understand how we can function better as a better organization. One of the feedback was to do more CSR, and they wanted to volunteer. They wanted opportunities to volunteer. So as an organization in general, CSR has been a big part of what we do. We've set up India's first Indian music experience museum just to preserve the music culture of this country. And like I said, building green and in a sustainable manner is very important to us. So all our office buildings are green rated, either platinum or gold rated. And that is a matter of pride for all of us. We do a lot of tree planting again to negate some of the trees that have to be felled for our construction. So we've planted more than 40,000 trees till date. Our goal was 30,000 trees in our 30th year. And now we've planted more than 40,000 in our 35th year. We grow a lot of Miyawaki forests as part of our developments. You know, when we do a lot of large scale townships or large office tech parks, and it's wonderful when you can actually create dense forest like feel within a tech park, because it really changes your mood, improves your mood for the better, and just gives a phenomenal vibe to the space. Apart from that, you know, I felt like COVID gave an opportunity for a lot of organizations to step up. And I felt like a lot of employees were looking to us as an organization to see how we would sort of respond in this time of need, not just for themselves, obviously they're themselves, their families, and the community at large. So what we did in COVID, you know, how we stepped up, like, was it if we could donate oxygen tanks to hospitals in need, or donate emergency ICU beds or meals, or we did a lot of activities, and I think all our employees really appreciated that. And obviously how you go out of your way to help them or their families in need, because sometimes it is an expensive treatment or the support when, in fact, unfortunately, when there were one or two deaths in the organization, of how did you sort of support that family? Those are really telling times of, or telling of the organization culture. So those are things, though I think those are important. One is obviously in, I guess, extraneous, extenuating circumstances, how do you step up? And one is, how do you do your course of business, normal course of business? Are you able to do it in a responsible and sustainable manner? So those are two important things. And yeah, we're also creating a hospital now as part of CSR, a 120-bed hospital that will be managed by St. John's.
Great. True examples of how organizations have stepped up during COVID. I'm sure it's going to continue. Sonali, anything you would want to add on best practices that you've put in place?
Yeah, thanks, Tati, and very impressive, Nirupa. I'm very happy to hear about Brigade's initiatives and growth in this. You see, Tati, as I said, I feel very strongly about sustainability, always have. So one of the things that we must recognize for sustainability is to use less and use longer. Okay. So I work for a brand which takes reliability as its #1 after customer service, the #1 principle. So we take pride in having, in India, mean time between failure of 52 years for our CNC, 8.5 years for the robots. And I point out India because we are a harsh climate, and we have entrepreneurs use our equipment very to the hilt, you know. But still, this is the average life that we get between failures. And then we also offer service as long as the customer uses. We never, it's lifetime support, which is unheard of in electronics industry or even manufacturing industry. And we straddle the two. So that, I feel, in itself is sustainable. Secondly, because of our design, the servo mechanism, we regenerate electricity or regenerate the power when the machine is doing like compressing and stuff, and that is refed into the circuit. So we are about, in certain machines, 67% more efficient, or we consume less power than other machines. So this is one class of sustainable practices, but I can take zero credit for that, other than the fact I just work here. So what we have been doing in FANUC in India since inception, long before I joined, is we plant trees. We deliberately plant trees. And in the last 15, 16 years, we have grown. We have built properties in Manesar, Pune. These are technical centers, full-fledged engineering centers, also in Bomasandra and Electronic City, of course. So together we have about 1,800 shade trees. We return more water into the earth than we use. Specifically, since 2004, we've been harvesting rain through 40 wells. We are much smaller, okay? So we can only talk that way. And since 2012, we began capturing rainwater. Harvesting and capturing are two different things. So we have a total of tanks in these 4 properties, and we capture 405,000 liters of rainwater, and then we reuse it. So we are towards carbon neutral. I can't comment on this. One, we never apply for certification. We're not publicly held. We don't have that requirement. It's just a private passion. And also, we don't know how to calculate. So it's an irresponsible thing to say that we are carbon neutral. I can't say that. We've been almost entirely plastic free for the last 16 years. So we make sure even our parties are sustainable. We don't buy stuff with Tetra Packs. It's a little example, but of course we only drink from glass for ages. We have not used chemicals in our landscape for the last, I think, 22 years. We always do tropical modern architecture. This is a term I learned. I love architecture. I read about it in my spare time. So basically, long before COVID came, we ensure natural light, natural cross ventilation, and trim electricity, and so on and so forth. Sewage treatment plants, and then of course CSR, the government of India should get the credit. They made it mandatory in 2013, and I felt it was a fabulous move. And of course I had much greater hopes. I thought India will transform, but I don't see that happening at all. We personally have been very actively involved in this. We don't talk about it, but 75% of our spend every year, without fail, we spend our entire CSR fund, and we do it towards education because we hope that that will radiate into greater earnings. And 25% approximately is dignity of life, which includes animals, sick people, etc., etc. So that's where we stand. And I really hope that we infect more people. Our buildings, we don't paint, we just make it raw concrete. And we don't use epoxy. Epoxy is a major thing in manufacturing shop floors. So we taught ourselves to use VDF, stuff like that. And we try to promote local craftsmen. So our latest technical center coming up in Madras, we're going to try to make it with stabilized mud blocks. And all of this, please don't confuse. I know you might see this sari and some gray hair, and it's all NGO-ish, but we have earned, my predecessors, FANUC has always had commanding market share, but we've held on to it. So we have about 78% market share in this country, and we do these things. So I think business and sustainability very much possible. If it's not happening, the boss doesn't believe in it, and it's greenwashing, lip service, whatever. On the personal front, I've got influenced. I'm a great admirer of the lady who founded Daily Dump. I haven't met her. That's an amazing lady. So I compost for the last 7 years. I don't use any chemicals in my personal hygiene, whatever, etc., etc. That takes some effort when you travel 12 days a month.
Yeah.
Carrying around Rita powder and all is not something everybody would do. I've been trying to do Datan because I think plastic toothbrushes are just awful, but it hasn't worked out yet.
Short way to
Lots
attract.
of tips to learn from you.
Yeah, short way for both your organizations to attract and retain talent.
No, I'm sorry, Tapti, that is such a lovely thing to say, but it is absolutely untrue. I don't meet young people who care about this at all. I don't meet old people who care about it.
They do.
Okay? Yeah. I haven't met them, but होगा. लेकिन हमारे अभी हम consumer stage में हैं. So perhaps in other industries, but हमारे यहाँ ऐसा नहीं है.
But maybe a segue to the next question, Sonali, if I could ask. Women in manufacturing, right? I know you're extremely passionate about that. You've done a lot of research on that. Give us some insights of what you've learned and what could be achieved.
Okay. Honestly, I have just lived manufacturing. I have not done research. But my reading comes from just lots of visits. Before Corona, I used to travel about 12 or 13 days a month to different places, to remote industrial pockets of India mainly. So yeah, women in manufacturing. I think they're absolutely underrepresented. Several years ago, maybe it started in Jamshedpur, and certainly was picked up in Rajkot area, and then in the Coimbatore area, where the shop floor started being all women or mainly women and so on. That style has really picked up. The latest electronics manufacturers who are popping up around South India, many of them are entirely run by school kids who are just finished 10th standard, and they're all girls. So this is fabulous, and of course it goes without saying that they are very sincere and etc., etc. I don't know if it is because it's a new job, they're new to working, that they're sincere, or is it a gender thing? Because I personally don't think. I think gender is just a detail. Yeah, conditioning, societal conditioning, that is real, but gender, I don't think so. What I miss and what really needs attention is to have women in decision making who are not daughters or wives or that is good, but that is not enough.
Yeah.
You need women in decision making, and that we have to do. So people like me have to hire more women in decision making, and we have to. It needs that push because it's not going to happen naturally at all. We are completely. I work only with men. I visit only men. Okay, whether it's Japan or India or whatever. We've exceeded time, is it?
No.
Shekhar is saying.
I'm going to put that now.
Sorry about things.
Okay.
Yeah, some way to go, but the sense is that we recognize that that is required and we work towards that is the key. Nirupa, your organization has led by example as well, awarded one of the best places to work 11 years in a row, you mentioned. What are you doing differently?
Yeah, I think, you know, I come from a hospitality background also, you know, and I remember interning at the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, DC. And the Ritz-Carlton logo is, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So if there is a guest who does not behave like a lady or a gentleman, starts abusing staff, you know, you don't have to serve them, basically. So they're very employee focused. I also think we as a company are employee focused. I mean, there are so many people, we're a 35-year-old organization, and there are people who have worked with us for 35 years. There are people who've been with us for 30 years, 25, 20, and every month we celebrate all the people who are with us for their long service. And I want to say almost 35% of our organization strength has been with us for more than 5 years. And that's not very common, I would say, because especially in a industry like real estate. But I think we have done a few things right. And one is, of course, making it a very safe place for women to work in. I think the women feel extremely comfortable there. There's a lot of, we live by our core values. I think any organization that wants to withstand the test of time needs to have a very strong culture. So we have, it's called QC first, which means quality and customer centricity first. And the first is expanded into fairness, innovation, responsible socially, and trustworthiness. But I think from an employee perspective, the two most important is fairness and trustworthiness. You know, and it's important to keep those open channels of communication. Anybody can speak up. I mean, they're encouraged to speak up, whether you're an intern or a fresher that has just joined in front of the chairman. We try to keep all the policies as transparent, you know, things like performance appraisal, all those things are very like, people take it very personally, and it should be personal because that's your entire work for the year. But I also think I think when you're top down and you genuinely care for the people who work with you, it sort of shows, because whatever said and done, people work for their bosses. You know, they work for or leave for their bosses. And we also try to hire people who are compassionate in general. You know, it's important that people are treated fairly, with dignity. There is dignity of labor, whether you're an office boy or somebody, housekeeping staff, whether you're a security guard. I think those are just key and basic, but not always adopted. So I think dignity of labor, respect for everybody from office boy to CEO is crucial for us.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so that's again a good segue. See, both of you, in fact, even Pankajam had you all have worked cross-border, right? You all have, in case of Sonali, it's Japan, US, and then now successful leaders in a global MNC in India. And most companies today have a global footprint. What can you share some insights on what it takes to be a leader in this kind of global footprint? What, how does cultural sensitivity come into, make an impact on decisions, for instance, how you treat or how you set up policies across the world? I'd love your comments from both of you.
Sonali, would you like to take that first, or you want me to go? Okay. Okay, I spent about 3 years in the US. I worked, like I said, mentioned with Ernst & Young, and obviously there, the US, the culture is a lot more casual, right? You have to call your partners and your managing partners by their first name. Obviously, we're not used to that. As a fresher right out of college, I had to call the big boss by his name, and I kept calling him Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So. He's like, no, you don't have to call me that. Just call me by my first name. And I was like, okay, Mr. So-and-so, so it's a very open culture. Everybody has, there's the hierarchy is obviously a lot less. You come into India, there is a lot of hierarchy in general, but I think that's slowly changing, because I think people want, I think now you can't just say what to do to somebody, you have to sort of explain the bigger picture. You have to be collaborative in nature. And I think that leadership skill between the East and the West is sort of, I think the disparities are getting reduced because I think collaborative leadership is important. People don't like being told, just do this. And because I said so, everybody wants to know why. They want to know why. They want to be part of the decision making, and that's required if you want people to perform. And you need their buy-in, and if you need their buy-in, they have to feel like they're part of the process, part of the decision making. Yeah, so that's what I would say. I think leadership now, I think the disparities, I would say, are reducing, and I would say that you need to be collaborative. You need to explain the why, and you as a leader should be okay to be questioned. Like if I come up with a decision, I should be very well okay to justify why the decision was made. And also it's okay to be wrong. There's no right, wrong, so I think as a leader, you should understand also your job is not just to give and command. I always say my job is to serve. It's like, how do I make your job easier? Like I'm not an engineer, and if you're an engineering company, I can't tell you how to do your job. I can only be an enabler to make your job easier, to do what you have to do. So I always look at leadership as being an enabler. It's almost like a service to your employees. How do you get the best out of them? How do you enable them to do the best that they can do? So I think I look at leadership like that.
Almost all the tenets of good leadership and inspiration leadership is something that you've touched on. Time to wrap up. If I can have a second from both of you, a couple of seconds from both of you on a message.
Sonali has got a hard stop at 7 before she sent a message.
1 minute, Shekhar. 1 minute. What message would you want to leave behind at the end of the session?
Go for it, Sonali.
This is so hard. It's a very tall order, Tapti. Message?
What was the question? What message would you want to leave?
At the end of the session, key message to the participants from both of you. What key message would you like to give to the participants from both of your successful leaders?
Just a few words.
So I would say, be who you really are.
Perfect.
And know that you're a diamond. Yeah? Be the best version of yourself. Easy to say, but must be done.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much. I've been telling to Tapti, my colleague, that I'm a diamond. She doesn't believe that, but thank you so much, Sonali.
We have that, Shekhar, on that.
I have to get that one. I'm really sorry. Shekhar, there are exceptions which prove the rule. So, okay, over to Nirupa.
My only thing is, either learn to love what you do or do what you love. That's my only thing.
Wow, very powerful. Thank you so much, both of you. It's been an amazing experience hosting this panel, and we're going to be in touch.
Great. Thanks for having us. Thank you, Shekhar. Thank you, Tapti. Nice meeting you, Sonali.
Lovely seeing you. Thank you. And thank you, Shekhar. Thank you very much, Tapti.
Thanks a lot, Sonali. Thanks, Nirupa. Thanks, Tapti. Nirupa, I congratulated you in your absence today, and I'm congratulating you in your presence now for the young 40, less than 40 in part of economic times. So congratulations on behalf of BCIC. Hearty congratulations to you. And we are really, BCIC is so happy because Brigade has been a great ambassador for BCIC. So congratulations to you. And definitely, we would like to open a champagne one day when your presence as a part of celebrating this Nirupa. Thank you so much for being here and participating in this event, Nirupa. Thank you, Sonali. You have been a great supporter of us. Thanks a lot. I know you were time constrained. You were very prompt on joining as well as on leaving. Sorry for holding you for more than a minute.
No, it's
Thank you
okay.
so much, Sonali, for being here and giving all your experiences. And as I said, you were a great leader of divergence. Studied zoology, studied law, studied CA, studied CPA, but heading a manufacturing organization. That's a great. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sonali.
sir.
And thanks, Tapti, for moderating this session. Thank you so much. So just I would like to request my BCIC team members to present a virtual mementos, and I assure it will reach to your office or home, what are the addresses that we have with you. Thank you so much. Over to you, BCIC team, guys. To all of you to participate tomorrow also. Over to you, Murali, for giving a word of thanks.
Thanks, Shekhar. I'm just giving this word of thanks on behalf of Hindu Shekhar, who is not here today for his commitments. Today we had a great day, very wonderful sessions. To start with, is Shekhar, President, with all this passion for doing this 2-day business leadership conclave, set the context rightly. We had Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, corporate advisor and director of Tata Sons and vice chairman Hindustan Lever, sharing his vast experience and his terms of EEE, SHE, and Shaper is well noted. SHE means sustainable, honest enterprise, and he stressed upon the need for people to be shapers of enterprises to be successful, and that's how that's the secret of building a great business institutions. We had the first panel moderated by Mr. T.R. Parshuraman, President BCIC, former President BCIC and whole-time Director of Toyota Industries Engine Private Limited. We had good panel there. We have Mr. S. Vaidishwaran, Vice Chairman, MD, Manipal Education and Manipal Group, Mr. N. Venkatram, CEO, Deloitte India, and Mr. S. Guruprasad, MD and CEO, Quest Corporate Limited, an all-men panel. All gentlemen shared their vast experience and wisdom in moving the businesses in new normal. We had people talking about digital transformation, new leaders emerging out of this new normal. Then we had PLI schemes and improving the GDP. And coming out of this pandemic, people talk about labor codes. And then Mr. Vaidishan also spoke about how education sector was impacted because of this work from home culture. And members also talked about Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities emerging out of this new normal. So this is more of a transformational work in difficult circumstances as compared to transactional working. So this is all about the panel number 1, very interesting panel. The second panel was moderated by Mr. Tapti Ghosh, a partner Deloitte, and then it's an all-women panel with Mrs. Sonali Kulkarni, President and CEO of FANUC India, and Ms. Nirupa Shankar, Executive Director, Brigade Enterprise Limited. They shared their personal experiences and tips for being very successful leaders and in a very challenging environment with the male-dominated environment. And people talked about how careful they were, how they put the time for CSR contributions and best practices, implementing best practices in their respective companies. And the last talk was by Dr. Rumki Majumdar, Associate Director, Deloitte India, giving a note on how the effect of geopolitical crisis has emerged out of this, for Indian economy has emerged out of this crisis. Very interesting session, very informative session, I would put it that way. She dealt upon the risk factors, the impacts on the Indian economy and things like that. So with all of this, I should also thank, as a matter of formal vote of thanks, to thank the Secretariat here led by Mr. Prithvi and Mr. Niranjan and Rupa and people, all of them. And my also thanks to Senior Vice President Dr. L. Ravindran, who did give a vote of thanks for session number 1. Thanks one and all for joining here, and hope to see you all tomorrow at the same time. And my thanks goes to Mr. K.R. Shekhar for shaping and upgrading the entire session of leadership conclave.
And you don't have to thank me, it's
Thank you.
my organization. No problem.
Thanks, Sonanda. See you all tomorrow.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.